that's a big part of what can be done out there to really improve the overall ecological integrity of those habitats. And then we have this objective 7 is selective tree removal to improve safe and healthy ecosystems. Again, on the one hand, that's removing non-native trees that are kind of taking over some of the habitats. A lot of that's already being done, but it's just a nod to continuing that effort. And then the other is specifically in habitats like Oregon oak. It's a conservation status, or as a conservation species under the Oregon Conservation Plan. It used to be widespread, now it's becoming less so. And there are some things we can do by thinning in those areas to kind of restore the traditional conditions that allowed those habitats to thrive and grow old and mature and be healthy. So that's the tree removal we're talking about, not just willy-nilly removing native trees for fun, but where it would specifically benefit an objective in this plan aimed at improving the habitat condition. And then adaptively managing ongoing public engagement opportunities. This gets at, the city's been really good at reaching out to people, working with the community, holding events, scavenger hunts, and all kinds of stuff to get people involved, and they've been successful at getting a lot of people involved and volunteering. The demographics of the people involved are changing, and it's a constantly evolving, I guess, process for how you bring people in and get them involved and interested in this ongoing restoration volunteer work that's so important to the overall management of these areas. So here's an example of a park you may be familiar with. This is Woodmont Park. It's undergone a lot of improvements over the last few years. I think it was just a vacant fallow orchard for a while and came into the natural areas or parks management and has been heavily enhanced, has had a lot of native plants put out there. So it's a good example, if you're familiar with the site, of some of the kind of ongoing work and ways that these habitats can be enhanced and made more resilient. In this case, we have an example of a type 2 or marginal, kind of medium habitat quality and as well as a type 3 or good quality habitat. And so in the example of the class 2 or moderate quality habitat, we have mixed conifer deciduous forest. And so there are specific strategies that are targeted to what you do in a moderate quality mixed conifer deciduous forest. And for comparison, here is a type 3 or very good quality wetland habitat. This wetland, I believe, has been enhanced with a lot of native plantings and removal of noxious weeds and so forth. So it's in good condition now. It's got nice buffers along the edges of the wetland to kind of provide some protection. So these are recommendations based on the habitat's already in good condition. How do we keep it that way? Minimize future degradation. So that's kind of an example of how the type of habitat and the condition of that habitat at a high level inform some of the strategies and priorities for management of these sites. This is a summary of our very first stakeholder engagement meeting, and it just kind of shows the breadth and variety of people that were involved. Again, we got a lot of really good feedback, and that did go directly into how the plan was modified to address things like adaptive management. We got a lot of good feedback through that process. This is a summary of all of the public engagement and stakeholder engagement activities, some of which I was involved with, giving talks just like this, and some of them were led by the city themselves, by Megan and her team, just meeting with people and kind of talking about this plan and getting feedback. There were 3 separate kind of opportunities to get feedback, 2 through meetings, and then 1 through, we passed out a draft of the report, got feedback, and pull all that stakeholder engagement feedback into the plan, and that really helped shape and finalize the report. And that's it for me. If you have any questions?
Thank you so much. Well, another big year-long process. So thanks to you and the team here at the city and all the members of the stakeholder groups who participated in putting this together. Is there any questions?
Well,
Okay, Councilor Wu.
Oh, no, thank you for your work. And I don't know if it's a question or sharing, because what I have noticed is there are a lot of species of trees that are dying, and it's very sad when you see it. In my school, we have a forest area, and you see, I was thinking it was water, but I think it's not, because there are trees that are near the creek and they are dying, which means that, I don't know, some people talk about an insect. What form of mitigation do you have about that? Because it's really bad.
Yeah, that gets back to that idea of providing a higher diversity of species, because a lot of what happened with trees along streams, for example, would be those cedars and alders. And they typically get a lot of water, and real quick, what they need to do is get it from those roots up to the top of the canopy. And on the really hottest days, it gets so hot that the working theory anyway is that they can't get that water up fast enough, and the trees start to die off at the top. So that's part of what we're talking about when we say, you know, what can we do? Well, we can look at other species that maybe are more drought tolerant, that can be supplanted when the park goes out, or when the Parks Department goes out to plant enhancement projects. They can look at a diversity of species instead of maybe some of the typical plant palettes that we used to use, maybe bringing in some other species from warmer, drier climates that are native and within the edge of our area, but are not typically used as much, but would provide us with other species that can kind of help keep that resilient habitat. And I will say that for the few trees that do die, they still provide habitat. So you can leave them there, and they'll provide cavities for nesting birds and other things, perches for birds and whatnot.
But yeah. And my other question is, it's also like, I see that the IVs are killing also a lot of trees, and I am glad Megan is working hard, but every time we call, we go, there's not the number of people I hope would come. And maybe the city should be aware of that it's not only Park's job, it's all of us to. When I was running for city council, I said I would call days of the month or of the year where we all go, fight against these IVs. And citizens like Mike Buck are people who are amazingly important to our community. And I really wanted to recognize that, because in my school, the teachers thought every time they say, oh, the guy who works for the city who comes here. And I told them, no, he's not a city employee. You see Mike at Iron Mountain, at everywhere, working hard. And those are actions maybe we should recognize, but maybe also we should give them more responsibilities. I don't know if they want it. I'm not talking for him, but so that they can involve youngsters like my school. Because you know what is going on at the school with things that we should mitigate, with some encroachment problem and stuff. But we are working with our students to be stewards of that part of the forest. And Mike is the one who's gonna come to the classroom, teach the student what to do, what species to protect. So I think Park, if we were working with the school district, with LOSD, so that because it's their forest. And that's my last question. What is your 100-year plan with the Oswego parks? In 2123, what would the park look like in Lake Oswego?
Maybe I can start, and I'll pass it to you. I will just say that we recognize that, and that was actually brought up by Mike and others, that there's a lot of people that have been heavily involved and have been doing a lot of great work for a long time, and a lot of them are at the point where maybe pretty soon they can't get out there and hike around the forest, and they need that younger next generation to come in. And so recognizing that, we did add that specific objective of really looking at different ways of trying to get people involved and interested and pulling people in to develop that interest in that team to take that significant mantle on in the future?
So it was so great to have you out that day, and we have such a great stewardship program with Babs Hamachek that works with Eric Hirschberger and myself and Caleb Simpson, who we have over 40 work parties a year, and what we found is we created the gnomes because we realized that we were needing to attract a younger group of families to come to our work parties. And then we've also really tapped into Solve, who is bringing a lot of people outside of our communities to come and help work. And so we're getting quite a bit of youth, and as well as working with other organizations within the city. We'd always love to do more and are always trying to accommodate any way we can. The part that is our really great partner in all this work is that we have the city land, but a lot of land that you see driving by isn't owned by the city. It's either owned by private or HOA, and we really do work and provide grant funding for our watershed councils, who are just such a huge backbone to helping that private land, private homeowners to be able to see the value and the importance of improving the watershed by saving our trees. And so we always would love to do more, and that's that holistic approach, that it's all of our community, it's not just parks. And that's one part I really like about this plan that we strove to. It is based on parkland, but it is a framework that other groups can use to be able to see and identify what their forest is and what some recommendations they can do in those areas. And so I'm really grateful to have that partnership with our watershed councils to be able to fill in that other void where we're not working on private land and they are, and to continue to do that outreach as well.
Good. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, you do a great job of luring those kids into the woods.
Those gnomes.
This is a great report. I really appreciated the depth of actionable things that we can do in this. And I think it's a wonderful game plan, but I think one of the challenges that we have is to get the message out to the rest of the community. And I don't know how you condense this down to well, not quite an Instagram post, but you got to get it somehow figured out to get a message, because I think the Army will come out when they know that there's a plan for the future. And to your point, I agree 100%. We're doing a lot in our city parks, but it has to be expanded, because we only have, 380 acres of kind of the forest management,
Yeah.
400?
460, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Big picture, we're 7,400 acres in Lake Oswego. So there's a lot of opportunity. One of the most repeated things in all your different parks when I went through the whole plan was invasive species. And is that something that you can ever get solved, or is that just like mowing your yard? It's just going to happen every week and you have to do it continuous. You can't eradicate it permanently, right?
Well, you can reduce it down to manageable levels, and that's the goal. And that was actually some of the feedback we got at one of the stakeholder meetings, was like, please don't say you're going to get to zero, because that's impossible. You know, they do come back and they spread from the adjacent lands where, you know, the parks can't control the weeds and the ivy's still there. It will come in, but if you can get it down to a level and you can replace a lot of that available habitat where it would germinate, for example, with the native species, there's less area for it to come in and recolonize. If you can kind of cut off some of those paths, or, you know, just create natural barriers where you're seeing the weeds come in through a stream or something like that. You know, there are ways to kind of minimize that. So that's part of the strategy.
And then from the standpoint of invasive species on private lands, which I think is, that's what I think a lot of people see as the ivy growing up the trees. Does it make sense to have some sort of an eradication, citywide eradication campaign? To really go through and say, we're dedicating the month of April and you know, the first 100 people that sign up, you get shears or whatever, something so that you get participation as a specific goal that we're going to eradicate ivy from Lake Oswego. Maybe that's a pipe dream, but it seems like that for every tree permit we issue, it seems like we have 1,000 trees that are vulnerable from having ivy take over and suffocating and dying. And so it's kind of, where do we put our priorities?
So if I could address that too, and I want to go back to what Councilor Mabup asked about the future vision of our parks. Kind of going back through the history of this. So the city started looking at eradication of English ivy specifically about 11 years ago, and that was based on the State of Our Urban Forest report that actually classified a lot of our city-owned parklands as poor and overgrown with ivy. So we initially looked at that. So if you look at this plan as a step in the continuation of where we as a Parks Department are going, you go back 11 years, we didn't really have a plan. We've developed a plan. Now we're codifying that plan on how we're going to continue manage. What we'll do is why it was important to have that public engagement is talking directly to what you're talking about now, Councilor Wendland, is that the first thing we were asked to do is take care of the publicly owned properties. And how are we going to manage those? How are we going to clean those up? How are we going to get them in a manageable state? How are we going to create a plan that's sustainable? Taking that plan and being able to accomplish some of those things and continue to implement that plan. Our next step really in the evolution of us as a Parks Department, obviously we will always have to take care of the publicly owned land, and we'll always have to manage that at a sustainable level, and this plan is helping us get there. But then it's really facilitating with our community, because as you read through the plan, you'll find that the threats aren't only just within the city's land, but it's adjacent land. It's other land banks that are within the community that have invasive species that may have some sort of disease within either their understory or their trees themselves. And we really need to address that. But what we'll evolve from is not only taking care of our own land, but then also facilitating the conversation and the public engagement with the public to help them and give them the tools that they need so that they can go and apply that to the rest of the property that our staff doesn't particularly take care of. But this has been, you know, I have to give it to Megan, to the consultants we work with, to our friends groups, to the citizens that have been involved in this process. In an 11-year period, we've been able to make significant steps towards evolving from taking care of our own land, but then now we're getting to the place where we can actually facilitate that conversation, educate, inform, and support the community in working on the same things we've been working on in our relatively small 460 acres. So, but going back to your question, Councilor we'll always have to take care of our public land, but we will be transitioning also to help facilitate the care of our larger environment, the entire community environment.
So, so you talk about urban forestry management practices, and you're a consultant that's probably done this same project in many communities, and am I correct? Or are we kind of where do we kind of rank with cities? Are we kind of ahead of the curve, or are we way behind, or are we about right on where we should be?
I'm not sure. I don't have enough background on what other cities are doing. I've worked with Portland, and that's about all I can tell you, and they've got...
Well, we know that, okay, so that's a pretty easy answer to that question. I won't say what the answer is, but from the standpoint, do you think the forestry practices that we're implementing and that they've been working on, are we getting closer to reaching some of the goals to kind of get, if we evaluate every 3 or 4 years? I mean, Megan, would you be happy with like having, you say like we're high or moderate or low. Do you think we're going to kind of achieve maybe a benchmark that you're going to be happy with?
I hope so, and that's where it's always going to be ongoing. The one thing that we're dealing with is Mother Nature, right? And so the part that it doesn't really show in this, unless you really know about the habitat enhancement plan and the invasive removal plan that Ivan spoke of, you know, in that 11 years, we've gotten to touch 370 acres of our 460. And so if you see before and after pictures of what we started with and where it is, it's pretty mind-blowing. The one thing that I'm looking at with that is over time, there will be new threats that come in, but I think this plan is setting us up and kind of affirming the work that we've been doing to continue to improve it as we go. And thinking of it, the reason why we really called out the habitat of it versus just a natural areas management plan, because when you're looking at the overall habitat, you're looking at the wildlife. An invasive species that we may decide that we need to tolerate adds to that wildlife or that habitat in a different way than what we would consider as just having no invasive species at all. And so our goal and intent is that as we continue to move forward with our management, we'll start to turn into more of a maintenance mode as plants start to grow, as the weed pressure, starts to diffuse, and then we're able to support our watershed councils and do more of that public outreach as we go through. Currently, we're trying to budget around $90,000 to support our watershed councils and more if there's a project that they need. And so we're balancing what we're using for the public land as well as the private land. And the projects that you see listed, the areas of study, all of those sites we are working in currently. So when you see that list of properties, it's not all of the properties we have, but they're all of the large ones of significance. Did I answer your question right there?
Yeah.
Maybe too much more?
No, but I think as long as we have metrics that we can measure and that we can kind of figure out how we're doing.
Yes.
I mean, I want you to be confident that we're moving forward and not backwards.
Yes. And I missed one piece in that, I realized, if I could say really quickly, is that when you look at those classifications, I think that's where the excitement part is. Because when we look at our original matrix, when we were looking at protecting the best and the worst, we have a matrix that's in our parks 2025 plan that was presented to Parks Board in 2010. You can see that we've increased those class ratings based on what Noah's team had evaluated with our contractors. And so yes, I was quite excited to see that we've made great improvements in that time. And I think this plan is going to help us with the funding we have to continue to move us forward with additional grant funding too. So yes, I do have that confidence, bearing that we are working within Mother Nature's classroom.
So the next part is expanding it to the rest of the city that we don't own, correct?
Correct. And a lot of that work is occurring, but we do have technically 3 watershed councils within our city that are providing a lot of that, as well as amazing educational outreach, but we can definitely do more. We are communicating and trying to get in with our schools. Anybody who has kids knows the school class time is really, really tight, especially coming out of COVID. And Babs Hamachek is continually trying to find those avenues to reach into the school district to be able to get that education. But our watershed councils are really doing a really great job in getting that outreach for us right now.
Well, if anyone can get you in there, Babs can get you in there.
She can, right?
So, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Mans.
Thank you. I've seen the major changes with our Helen Ann Woods Friends group over the past 11, 12, however many years, working with Megan Big John and a previous staff member whose name escapes me. But if you walked through that woods on the Hallinan side, not on the new property side, and you look at the plantings that have been done and how those plantings have taken hold and what the forest floor looks like, it is remarkable. Ivy was removed, plants were planted, native plants, obviously, and it feels like a forest. So these things can happen. It does take time, obviously, which, I have patience for those things, but it is quite a remarkable thing to see. I am just delighted to hear what Councilor Wendland said about moving to work with our private partners, whether it be HOAs or riverbank owners along Old River Road, for example, where the trees are quite literally, some of the ivy on that, it's just remarkable. You don't even know there's a tree there. So I will be looking forward to that. So thank you very much, all parks people, for the work that you've done.
Great.
And to our friends groups. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Mans. Councilor Burdick.
First, just a quick thank you to what all the groups and you are doing. I think this is fantastic. And this is a kind of a not this long shot question. Have you had any success reaching out, working with the railroad? Because I know there's a lot of ivy on the trees in kind of their right of way, which gets kind of tricky of what we can do, what you can and can't do.
I have reached out to them before to try to work on our little area of Campbell Native Garden, which is getting transitioned, and not really much response. But I think it's something definitely, like you said, Babs can get it done. Maybe we'll have Babs start calling them to see if they're willing to talk with us. But I think the part about this plan too is it's not just our forest, it's holistic, right? And so it does kind of create that framework. And I think it's a really good idea to give them a call again.
And I say that just because my neighborhood association was trying to do things around pulling the ivy, and yet you can't go onto their property and pull ivy. So that's where this question comes from. So
And it's a pretty big buffer too,
It
a
is, so-
setback, so.
So thank you and good luck.
Thank you for the reminder of that though.
I wanted to ask about some of the coordination that the plan kind of calls for. One specific question, the report mentions a programmatic permit for tree removal. Is that something that exists now, or is that something that would need to be created?
No, I don't know, a couple of years now ago, but I spoke with Scott when we were getting started with this, and there have been examples for utilities, and I think Scott can remind you better than I can, but there are examples of where something similar has been done. But the idea is just to try and see if there's a means of identifying a process that would be more efficient, that's all. And there are some relatively similar examples. I don't know, Jessica, you know what I'm talking about? I'm sorry to pull you in, but you may be able to answer that a lot better than I can.
It's quick. Jessica Numanalu, Deputy Director of Planning Department. Yeah, we do have it's kind of a programmatic permit. It's called a Resource Enhancement Project that does allow parks or individuals who have resources on their property to have a plan for their property that could include tree removal, and it could include removal of native species where that is warranted. An example of that is the Westlake Homeowners Association did a resource enhancement project where they were restoring oak habitat, and that did involve removing some native species in order to give better light and habitat for oak trees. So yes, we do have that. It's still a process that one has to go through. So I do think what they're looking for is something that maybe would be more of an over-the-counter type of a permit based on compliance with the plan, which is something that the planning department obviously is willing to work with the Parks Department on to accomplish. But yeah, there is a version of that, though there is some process that maybe is more lengthy than the Parks Department would like to go through. So.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, our goal is to move towards that once this is approved and just see if we can find a good, efficient process for that. The idea being that if you have a specific goal for, say, oaks, and you have oaks at 7 different parks, instead of going in for separate permits for each one, maybe you could find a process that would allow you to just manage those per this plan efficiently.
So some of these plan efforts, we have we're receiving the state of the urban forest report tonight, and we talk about the, perhaps the update starting next year of the community forestry plan. So how much overlap is there between updates to those plans and some of these objectives here that, we'd be tying these things together?
So we're definitely working together on it. Quite happy that we're presenting today. Jessica and Scott have both helped and been a part of this project, and we'll be working with Noah and myself on that programmatic tree permit. And then as well, I've been able to help and work beyond the urban forestry report that they're going to be giving today too. So they really dovetail together. If you look at what is going to be presented later, it's the overall view of the health, and we're looking at kind of the habitat in that forest and below. And so they're really going to be connected together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would just, as we come into goal setting for next year, to ensure that you have the resources on all levels, to be able to accomplish those plans, to communicate, what we can do to help ensure that work is able to, we can incorporate it into what we're doing here for this time ahead. The plan is good in the sense that it, really encourages continued dialogue and progress reports. I did note that it was talking about kind of comprehensive results being posted every 3 years, which seems to make sense. But is there any way we could do more frequent updates, especially as it relates to the budget process, so that we'll make sure we're tying budgeting into what's needed for these reports, and we're not coming at the end of a biennium, then getting a progress report, then waiting 2 more years to, program those?
Yeah, so currently, we create, and obviously this plan hasn't been adopted yet, so it's not integrated with this plan, but we currently, on an annual basis, create a report that talks about the investment that we've made both in habitat enhancement and also in our invasive removal. So on an annual basis, we have a report that we create now that kind of is a stepping stone. That's our report that we balance against the resources that are available in the budget for those activities. But we anticipate as this plan is adopted, because this plan goes into beyond what we're doing now, that we will be able to create something on an annual basis that really talks about how this plan's being implemented and where it is. The initial years, I imagine it'll be closely related to the reports we already have, because we're in that work. And if you read this plan really does describe a lot of the prescriptive work that we're doing already. But as we move forward, I think that you'll see that those annual reports will change and the flavor of them will change, and it'll be more aligned, not necessarily with invasive removal and what we've done previously in our habitat enhancement program, but it'll be more into the other objectives of this plan.
Okay, so the work will start with the current funds we're expending for the habitat enhancement. Those funds
Yes.
will be, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that's fantastic, okay.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
Oh, go ahead.
Move to adopt resolution 2232.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent
We
work.
see you. Any opposed?
you.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
very
That
much.
motion, sorry, motion passes.
Thank you all.
6-0. Thank you. We appreciate you. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Next thing.
Do one more.
One more, okay. You good? Okay. Okay. Next on the agenda, two more, is an update on the wastewater treatment project. Joining us for the discussion is Anthony Hooper, our Deputy City Manager, along with Leslie Finnegan of Universal Field Services, and Farsad Alhadi of the Portland Bureau of Environmental Services. Farsad, oh, you're by yourself. Where are the others?
So Farshad Al-Adadi is joining us virtually, and so is Leslie Finnegan.
Oh, beautiful, okay. Oh, via Zoom, it says that.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. So Carrie's going to load up that PowerPoint presentation. What I want to first start by saying is that, we started this process of looking at a new treatment plant back in 2018, June 2018 is when we did the feasibility study, and we came to the council to start actually the authorization to start a P3 procurement effort in December of 2018. So this project has been underway officially for 4 years. And during that time, we have done a lot of things to develop this project and to advance it. And we're now, at 60% design. So this project has been advanced a fairly long way. We started with EPCOR back in April of 2021. And during that time, we not only advanced designs, but has advanced permitting and has, we've looked at lots of different work products, including, doing archaeological, looking at that, looking at, there's been just a lot of work that's done on this project. What I wanted to do is start by just showing you a picture of one of the renderings of 60% design. What you'll see is that Foothills Road is the road that's in front of us, and you can kind of see the wastewater treatment plant, the existing one, in the background in the far left upper right corner. And then what you have here is you have the administrative building in the front, and then you have really big process buildings that are all covered. What you see on top of the roof, the blue thing, is it's actually not a water basin, that's actually solar panels is what those are. The basins are hidden inside of the buildings themselves. So, this whole site is about 6 acres, and it's a very large building that's sitting on top of that site. That's what we need in order to, treat wastewater. And, back in 2014, City of Portland did a analysis to see, that they needed a bunch of upgrades to their current facility, and it was built in 1964, and it's aging and needs to be replaced. And what they found when they did 2014 and came up with a bunch of upgrades need to happen, that they would also need to have an additional 2 to 3 acres of land in order for them to be able to accomplish that. And for the new plant, we're looking about 6 acres is what we need. This is just another view from Foothills Road with the administrative building. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the project other than I wanted just to show these renderings, and I want to talk really quickly about open house that we have and talk about timeline, but then I want to transition to talk about the actions that we're here for today. One thing I want to mention is that we had a virtual open house, and it was held online, and we had a pretty good turnout. There was 486 people that viewed it, and they spent about 6 minutes and 33 seconds viewing it. We had a lot of different interactive slides. One of the photos you see up there is one that we can slide the photo back and forth to see what it looks like existing and then what it would look like new. And then through the survey, we found that people really highly valued clean water, energy efficiency, resilience to natural disasters, being a good neighbor, and providing affordable wastewater services to customers. We are going to have this website linked to our existing website, so you can go and see the open house, but you just can't submit a survey. That's the only thing that's closed. But it will still be available for people to look at in the future as well. So what I want to do is talk about where we are in this progressive process and where we're heading. So as I mentioned, we started the procurement back in December 2018, and we have actually progressed all the way to where that red dotted line is at. And it's where we're going to be considering today the amended interim IGA with the City of Portland, and also the resolution of necessity, and then as authorization for $200,000 in consulting services. So what this basically shows you is that we have advanced a lot of things, including cost development, permitting, scheduled development. And so I think what we're planning to do is come back on February the 21st and ask the council to consider an extension with EPCOR, Foothill Water Partners, to go to 90% designs, and then wait on a long-term, on the project for the next 30 years, and wait till we can continue to try to work down cost. Also, hopefully, with us moving forward with land acquisition, that was kind of a big risk item for them. So us moving ahead now helps give us some more certainty, and also by us, continuing to further develop to 90%, we're able to also, eliminate some or get a little fine-tuned on some of the different items so we have less contingency as part of the thought process there too. And hopefully maybe the market turns around a little bit and inflation, interest rates go down, but we're going to keep working and trying to do other things, not just hope for that alone. So basically, what we're going to ask you in February is to allow us to have up to a year to continue to develop this project, and then at that point, making a decision on the long-term 30 years of what that will look like, including moving to potentially to a brand new plant. The other thing I'll say about this slide, and then there's a lot going on here, is when we get to once again it's easy to think of this project as not actually being finalized, but I think a better way to look at it is that we're developing design like we would on other projects, and we're getting our project more developed. And that it's really that last stage that we need to get the agreement on as moving to construction, and we can't do that without having land. And land is critical for us to move forward on this project. It really is a critical path for us. So I want to just show where we're talking about for the designated location for the new treatment facility. So there's 3 properties, and it's 99, 101, and 113 Foothills Road. And one of the reasons that we selected this is that it's large enough to meet our needs. Pipes actually converge right in that area. They're all leading to the existing Tryon Creek plant, and then also it's actually better for floodplain as well. So I thought I would just kind of talk about a few things that we've done as far as outreach with the owners and tenants. We hired Universal Field Services back in November 2021. And Leslie Finnegan, again, is joining us virtually and is able to answer any questions that you might have for her. We then sent a letter kind of giving general information back in December. And then again, there's multiple different times that we've checked in officially with letters, although I will say there's been a lot of informal contact and discussions outside of this as well. This is just us giving formal letters. One thing I'll say about this is that, we offered early relocation benefits and also rent protection, meaning that if a tenant wanted to move out, that we would compensate them and allow them to either to move or to give them in lieu payment up to $40,000 is what it is. That compensates them if they decide not to relocate, they just want to be done. That's one option for them. And so then we also gave rent protection that we actually give a check to the owners to compensate for the monthly rent that they lose every month. The reason that we did that early is that with this project, moving forward, the business owners were worried about how that might impact them, whether tenants might move out early and a loss of financial income. So we wanted to make them whole in that area through the rent protection. We didn't have to do that. Actually, we're not required by law to offer relocation benefits until you make an offer, which we're looking, anticipating that to happen in late February of 2023. However, we thought it was the right thing to do, so we did it early. So I think that's the extent that I want on this. So there's a lot of writing on the screen. So this is the eminent domain process. So, the first action is tonight to adopt the resolution of public necessity, which basically states that we have a public need to build a wastewater treatment facility at those 3 properties that I showed earlier. And so the next step is that we would need to make an offer, and that we anticipate doing that in February. We are going to go to the City of Portland Council to ask them to adopt their interim IGA, which then will allow them to give us money to help us pay for the property acquisition and relocation. So, but we need that process to fully go through, and it's not going to be done until about mid-February. So that's why we would wait till then to make an offer. And we'd also want to discuss that further with all of you. And then I think last is, so I'm not going to read this whole paragraph, but I did include it because there's a lot of different options that the city has through the court system, and I wanted to lay those out here. And I think, I believe that our city recorder forwarded you to the PowerPoint, so we can read that later. But what it says is that the city can make choices based upon our needs and also what's reasonable. And so just because the law allows for us to move fast through this process, or it doesn't mean that we have to elect to do it at those different time periods. I mean, we can decide to take a longer and allow for a longer relocation if we want to, but those are our options. This is the last slide, and before I'll take some questions. So this is the different terms of the deal with Portland. I feel it's a very fair deal. They're going to share 50-50 cost of land acquisition, even though, frankly, we use 70% of the overall flows of the existing plant. And they also are going to give us about $5.9 million, and then forgive up to about $5.1 almost in costs that we owe them. And then if we decide to go with the upgrade option, they would own 50%, but if we move forward with a new plant, then we would own 100% and then lease it out. And then once again, they're going to go to the council on January 4th with second reading on the 11th. I will go with them to the council, and I will plan to speak there as well. Okay. So with all of that, I'd like to turn it over to you all for questions for either myself, for Shad, or for Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the communication has been thus far with the property and business owners down there in Foothills?
Yeah. Actually, Leslie, this might give you a good chance for you, since you've taken the lead on that, to introduce yourself and then also to talk about that.
Hi, I apologize for you just seeing our company logo. I don't know why the picture doesn't show me, but It's okay. We have been working with the property owners since last spring, or actually when we sent the first general notice, which was in December. We've gone out, and our relocation agent, who is not on this call, but she went out and has done as many occupant interviews as we can. So when we do a relocation, we try to get out as much information about who we're impacting and what their needs are going to be, where they want to go, what kind of businesses or tenants they have. So we started doing that, and the feedback we got was, we don't have enough time. We don't have this. We can't get moved by December of next year. And so that was when we talked to the city and told them that they could give them an intent to acquire notice that gives early relocation benefits. It doesn't start the relocation process on a formal process, but property owners or tenants could start looking for replacement sites. And I remember one conversation with one of the property owners. He was real concerned. He said, well, if I don't know when I'm going to have to leave, but I find a piece of property and I want to buy it, but then I don't know if this is going to happen. So what do we do? So that was what this intent to acquire early protects him. He can go out and secure a piece of property if he needs to, knowing that we're going to move forward. So we've done a lot of back and forth with the tenants when they call. Liz goes out and meets with them. We've had discussions about move estimates. She's taken a few movers out there, and we've looked at what it's going to cost to move them. So she's real good about returning people's calls and going out and seeing what the issue is. We have relocated 2 tenants of one of the owners, and the city did agree to pay protective rent. So that keeps the property owner has a steady income coming in from his rent while this is all taking place. It also prevents him from bringing in another tenant that we have to eventually relocate. So it protects the city that way. But this was a good, in my opinion, as doing this for a number of years, this is a good process to give them as much time as possible to relocate. Now we've, like from April to December, they've all had the ability to get compensated if they find a place to relocate to, and we will help them. And Anthony mentioned several of the relocation benefits that they get, and we've explained this. We've given them brochures. When we gave them the intent to acquire, we also talked about all the eligibility they would have. Again, they're not required to move yet. They don't have to move. We don't even really start the formal relocation process until the offer is made to the owner. So anything they do now is, pretty much because they've decided to take this step and start being proactive in this whole process. We're there for them whenever they need it. We've been looking for replacement properties for some of the owners. It's tough, and we recognize that. We've been contacting some realtors ourselves trying to find replacement sites, but it's really up to the property owner to find their own replacement site. The law requires us to assist them, but it's not our job to actually find a replacement site for them, but we try to help them as much as we can. So there's, it's what everybody's entitled to is relocation advisory assistance. And that's what we do. We provide the assistance to help them determine what they're entitled to under relocation, because there are several benefits. We help, they can get reimbursed for going out and looking for places. They just have to keep records of that. And there's a $2,500 limit on that. They have multiple ways of being compensated for moving. They can do a self move, they can do a commercial move, they can do a combination of all the above. and there's no limit on that. Whatever it takes to move them to a replacement site, they get that reimbursed, and it's whatever is actual, reasonable, and necessary. So, you know, some moves are very easy. Some moves are, you know, hooking up to a trailer and hauling it, you know, within 50 miles, which is what the regulations say. Some of them take a move planner, and it takes multiple people involved in getting somebody moved, because it also may include dismantling equipment and taking it to the new site and reconnecting it, and it may require a modification to the site. So moving costs can be expensive. They also get reestablishment. And so reestablishment costs, there's a limit on that, but that's things to improve the site when they actually get moved. And then Anthony mentioned there's a flat fee. And if they choose to just either, they don't want to deal with us, they don't want to deal with, you know, it's a small business, they may go out of business, and they can get a flat sum, and that's up to $40,000. So we've been explaining all this to the property owners and their tenants repeatedly. So, so you asked me a short question, and I gave you a rather long answer. I'm sorry.
You didn't know. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. So what the work you've been engaged in right now is just this preliminary relocation service, and we have not yet started any of the acquisition process. They're kind of two separate processes, right? The property acquisition and this relocation.
Yeah, when they get the offer letter, and we will present the offer to the owners, and along with that, they get their official, you are eligible for relocation, even though they've got one of those forms again, but they will get a 90-day notice at that time. And it will say you have at least 90 days to vacate. So it doesn't mean they have to be out at the end of 90 days, but that's what the regulations say, that we are required to give them at least 90 days. So, and that will start the relocation process. So yes, everything we've done right now is they're eligible, we've made them eligible, but we haven't required them to do anything yet.
Mm-hmm. You know, we have some many examples throughout town of where we've had to, you know, I think of this building here. We, I mean, where we're sitting, I think is where I used to get the dogs get their hairs cut. And North Anchor, all of the work that the city did to acquire property along Boones Ferry Road for the Boones Ferry Road project, which was a huge number of property owners, and negotiations. Yeah. Did you work on that one as well?
Oh yeah, we had all the acquisitions and relocation. I think there was only one relocation on that project.
Well, I feel like we have thus far had a good reputation really working closely. I remember on the council when we moved the Lexi Dog business. I mean, we found them a new spot, and I know that may have been apparently going above and beyond the regs, but it seems like in the past we have good success in really working hand in hand with these local businesses to ensure that we're treating them the right way and not just following the strict letter of these regulations. Personally, I don't quite like hearing that so much, that we're just doing what's required. I think we need to do a lot more than just what's required. So I'm hopeful as we go through this process, I'm expecting that, and I'm sure my colleagues agree, that we're working hand in hand with these folks and I know that there's a variety, and they all have, different goals, in terms of going forward or not going forward. And you have landowners and you have tenants, and so there's a variety of situations down there. But just to ensure that we are really working closely in the way that we do with the businesses in our community to ensure that they are being handled with great care.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hooper would agree with what I'm about to say. That's been our intention. That's why, for example, we extended these benefits early, and why we extended the rent protection to make sure the current property owners. Some of these businesses out there are relatively comparable to moving a Lexi Dog or moving the locksmith. some of these these businesses, because they're more industrial in nature, have unique challenges because we simply don't have a large quantity of vacant industrial properties in Lake Oswego. And so,
Right.
and frankly, I think that's why we recommended to you and continue to recommend that we take the extra time that this process involves, is so that we can be more proactive and do more work. Because as you recall, on the original schedule, we'd be actually asking these businesses to move out about now. We'd have to be in possession of the property by June of next year. We've added an extra year because we recognize that there's complexities with some of these businesses that don't exist with a retail or office kind of use.
Okay. I know that, I mean, receiving a 90-day letter sounds very harsh, so I hope that's coupled.
But that
with-
is legally required, so we have to send that letter. And as you know, lots of times communication from the government that's legally required isn't the most friendly. But as I say, I think our goal is to understand that there's complexities involved in these businesses, and we need enough time to help them with the process.
That's right. So these required letters, so I mean, they'll hopefully met with, a friendly face and a contact who they know they can work with, even though required. Our intent is not to be moving people out of their businesses in 90 days. Why we've extended the timeline, okay. Just so we're all
I have to add too that, we're hired to do this, but relocation is important to us. I hate to say it's a passion, but that's when we're involved in relocation. Our goal is to help these property owners, these tenants, the businesses, or in some cases residential, and make sure that they get everything that they're entitled to. And I think the city's been tremendous in recognizing that it does take longer. But she's right, and I don't know who was speaking, but giving them as much time as possible is critical. And we will be it's not hand holding, I don't want to say that, but we'll be with these people all the steps of the way, making sure that they get everything that they're entitled to under the relocation program.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Everything they're entitled to in a manner that goes above what's required. Okay.
Yeah, and the city, I mean, if there's federal funds in there, we have to follow the Uniform Act. The city can city has more leverage. They can go beyond that. You just can't go beyond that.
Okay, thank you. We have some other questions here. Councilor Nguyen.
Oh, thank you. And again, just as a fellow small business owner myself, I think that it's important that we as a council recognize that there's a lot of passion, a lot of emotion built up into growing a business, and I think that's something it's really is an extension of your person. So although I won't be involved in going forward, my hope is that we as a council can recognize the value of these businesses, and hope that we are able to, during this back and forth, there's going to be an opportunity for the landowners to be able to counteroffer and use whatever appraisals and third-party opinions that might be available to them. So hope that we continue that cooperation with our longtime businesses. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. That's right. Councilor Mbu?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to say because I'm a small business owner, and I know I've read most of the letters to show the importance of these people in our community, the enthusiasm, and really, what people were recommending means that these folks are very important to Lake Oswego, and we have to honor that. And I feel more comfortable hearing that we are going to give them time and talk to them, not because these are our people, and some of them have been here 30 or more years, which means that when they leave, it's going to be something empty, and we are talking about 2027 for this thing. So I think I don't want to indulge in, because there's some legal implication, I know all that, but I just want as you know, like to reiterate that this council support these business owners, and we have to make sure that we make it easier for them and do what is fair. And I'm sure Anthony is working for that, and it's very important. When I was reading this thing, I was really touched by this thing. And I used to live on foothills. I used to go there. I had my car fixed by, and these are people of high level of, you know, moral probity, and their impact in our community is very important. I don't want people thinking that Lake Oswego is a city that does not respect. As a matter of fact, on our agenda, we are going to talk about how to help businesses come to Lake Oswego and thrive. So I think I just want them, they're here in the audience, that we are going to make everything we can for them to not be, you know, everything we can, legally. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Boop. Councilor Wendland.
Maybe my colleague can just do the negotiation. So I think it's interesting. This is a council that we're all small business owners. So we have a passion for this. And I agree with my colleagues 100%. For a lot of reasons, I think the Lake Oswego style is to take care of our own, and we need to make sure that we do the best efforts that we can. I just want to say that the letters that we have received, I just wanted to throw out a couple facts that I think we all have to know. First of all, there is not another place that we can really put this water treatment plant. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of space down in foothills to make this conversion. So this is not our, this was not necessarily a choice that we made. We're doing it for the public interest to ensure that we have infrastructure and facilities that can take care of the customers as a whole. So this is not a personal thing. This is a realistic, unfortunate sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, an unfortunate circumstance that we don't have another 20 acres that are just floating down there. We are tight on industrial space. I think that is a concern. There's another fact too, that we have a partner, Portland, which actually runs the facility and owns the land. And I've been involved in this since almost the beginning, and this has been a long, drawn-out process that is intentional, and it's difficult, it's complex, and one of the things that we have to have is the support from Portland as well as Lake Oswego, and we do have that. They don't want to do it as well. They're not in that business to disrupt. But I do echo the comments of my colleagues. I guess, how do we determine value? Is that a process that they go through? Can somebody explain that? Maybe that would be.
Yeah, the process is we make an offer, and we actually disclose the appraisal to the property owner when we make that offer. The property owner can engage in negotiations. At some point, however, the city has the option of entering into or initiating a condemnation action, an eminent domain proceeding, and that's where the actual value would be determined, is in that process. So, as the council has been through this discussion before, you know that the city will pay the fair market value on it. So that's how it gets determined. Ultimately, it could be, worst case scenario, it's in the court process. Okay? We hope, of course, we can reach a negotiated settlement that long before, because it's protracted and it's.
No one wins with attorneys. Sorry.
Well, now wait.
In the financial game,
right.
If we're dickering over,
right. Now, as Assistant City Manager Hooper indicated, there's a process where if we need to, because of timing, there is a process where we could ask the court for an order of possession. We tender in the amount of money that we think is a fair market value. The owner can draw that out, and then we continue litigating the value. So there is a process that we can get in, even though we haven't wrapped up the value yet. But then we would be obligated for the eventual value, of course.
Okay. Then another question I have is, there seems to be rumors out, or some information on some of the emails that we have no suitably zoned land to move a couple of the businesses that are in the repair business for automotive and boats. Is that true that there's not another place in Lake Oswego that those businesses could move to? Or is that that's zoned? Do we have a zoning issue?
So there's about 15 auto repair businesses in Lake Oswego. Some of them are commercial areas, some are on Boone's Ferry, some are, I mean, they're very areas. So it depends on the business that you're talking about. Some have more leeway than others. But I mean, there isn't a lot of vacant choices. I mean, they're operating right now. The businesses are. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to actually suggest we ask Jessica or somebody else to talk. I think automotive repair can happen in commercial zones. Yeah, here comes Scott. That's what we needed. Let's get someone who actually works with Chapter 50 up here.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the automotive repair and marine repair or boat repair are both uses that are permitted in obviously the industrial zone, but also the industrial park zone. That's in our southwest employment area. But there are design controls and standards to where I think those uses have to be enclosed in a building, which may be difficulty. But I think the critical issue is that there are just not a lot of spaces or vacant land that's available. That's more of a limiting factor.
Okay.
What I will say, though, is Universal Field Services will work with the property owners in earnest to look at it, different properties. And how I might even equate this is that this is the first official action, and so we did a lot of extra, but it's almost like those games didn't quite count yet. This is now playoff games, and so this is now where everybody is going to do their best to find what we can. And, so I have a lot of confidence in Universal Field Services, and they've been on a lot of our projects over a long period of time. Once again, I have confidence in Liz and Leslie and I will as well be involved, that we will do our best. Absolutely.
So this is really just I don't want to say it's the start, but I mean, this is the formal start of this.
This is the formal start. This is the time you decide, is there a public interest?
Right.
Is this the property, or is this the area where it should go? Well, when you're going to build a sewage plant, it's at the bottom of the hill. Right? And it's next to the lines that are there, and it's now the time to initiate it. And from a design, construction, financing point of view, staff has indicated, and as well as EPCOR, that this is the time. We've had, we started this project with the B3 project property partner without any land, and we've always been asked, when's the land? Can you assure the land? Are we serious? Is this thing going to happen? And you've got the lenders asking the same question, to them. And so, and there is a need for the land, as indicated in the report, whether this project with EPCOR goes forward, or with somebody else, or the Portland plant gets expanded. I mean,
Either way, we need the land.
Yeah.
So we have the need. Is that the basic?
There's a
we meet the first criteria.
Yes.
And it's for the best public interest.
And is it now? And we think now is the time.
Right.
And the property owners, I think, would rightfully say, well, I'm not going to get too serious because I don't know whether you're serious. I don't know what, the property owner to say relocate and that sort of thing, because I don't know whether you're moving. I mean, should I have looked 6 months ago? Well, so this is the time to start the seriousness, if you will. I mean, this is the official first step to talk about relocation.
Well, I remember we did this a lot with Boones Ferry Road properties, and we did resolutions of necessity kind of en masse for various properties, and I don't think any of them ended up going to, we negotiated with all of them. There might have been some that went to, I don't know, that we couldn't reach a resolution with, you know, that's always gonna be the case. But yeah, so there's nothing, I guess, kind of to Councilor Winland's point, we have a lot of concern that something, you know, nefarious is up here, and why are we at this point? So we haven't even negotiated with the, you know, these folks at all when it comes to the property. So this is just the first step. We recognize I remember when this building, and again, I'll go back to the dog business. I mean, it was a tough decision to see us having to relocate a business to put the city. I mean, they've been here a long time, just like these folks down in Foothills have been there a long time. So these are not easy decisions, but we're balancing them with this great public need. And the wastewater treatment plant is not an optional facility. I mean, it is a needed facility, so we wouldn't be here unless we absolutely had to be. And we recognize the angst and the sacrifice on the part of our business neighbors down in Foothills, and want them to know that they will be treated here like neighbors, fairly, and like we have. And I think that's why we've seen such good success over the years in really difficult property negotiations, because of the approach that we've taken. And we've never had a bad resolution. People end up coming out of it feeling positive. So we hope that will also be the case here. Okay. Questions? Do you want to? We have a few. We have a few motions on this bad boy. So
You want to move one at a time or all together?
we can do them all together as ends.
Okay, so
Oh,
By
you
hand
want-
one.
do you want me to?
move to adopt resolution 2245. 2, move to authorize the city manager to sign the first amendment to the interim intergovernmental agreement with the city of Portland. And 3, move to authorize an additional $200,000 in project consulting services for the wastewater treatment plant project.
Second from Councilor Wynn. All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Did we get an aye from?
Councilor Mounds, is that an aye?
Yes, that was an aye.
Thank you, Councilor Mans. Okay, motion passed. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Hooper.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good continued work on this. Okay, at this point, we are going to take a short dinner recess for about 15
I was only going to recommend that you do the next item so that if Counselor Mans wasn't going to be able to stay for the rest of the meeting, so maybe we could ask Counselor Mans.
Counselor Mans, are you good for
CPI.
another 15 minutes or so? Okay. You're going to get through. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
CPI.
Ms. Beth. Thank you.
We continue?
No. Break.
Okay.
We recess?
Okay, we are back in order. Next on the agenda is item 8.4. This is ordinance 2920. This is an ordinance updating the reference consumer price index for LLC 12.02.060. And Mr. Boone, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the council may recall, this was originally part of the annual code update. It proposes to change the consumer price index that was previously for the CPI of the Portland area to the consumer price index for the Western region, size B and C, because there is no CPI for Portland anymore. That was discontinued by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that's the effect of this measure. As indicated in the staff report, the council, due to the actual conflict of interest and the use of public office position, this would phase in for any council member who votes on the matter. This would phase in for that time. Okay. So point is that the index wouldn't apply for a councilor who votes on the matter during their term until they would be reelected. If they were to stand for new office. If council has any questions, be happy to answer.
Okay.
That's the short summary of it.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Boone. Okay. Any questions? Are we ready to? Okay. And would someone like to make a motion to enact ordinance 2920?
Move to enact ordinance 2920.
Thank you, Councilor Mills. Second from Councilor Nguyen. Any discussion? Right. I'm going to abstain from voting on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that's 3 ayes, 1 abstention. Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. 3-0. Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to move on to resolution 22-44. We'll bring our two colleagues back in here. This next item of business is the Economic Development Strategy and Resource Plan. And we have Director Siegel here to
Thank you, Mayor
talk to
Buck.
us about it.
No, do you have other colleagues joining you?
Well, yes.
Okay.
We'll give them one side. Thank you. We'll extended break. Gentlemen. See, oh, he is.
I can get started whenever you'd like, but I'm
Well,
willing to wait.
Once there, almost there.
Okay.
Okay, here we are. Good job. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, thank you, Director.
Oh, my pleasure. Good evening, Mayor Buck, members of the City Council, Scott Siegel, Community Development Director. Resolution 22-44 is for adoption of an economic development strategy and resource plan. This follows the council goal to support business investment and job creation. And as you may recall, last year around this time, a little bit earlier in the fall, you met with the Chamber of Commerce. We went through 2 study sessions and had a presentation from economic consultant Mary Bosch, who went over some metrics and kind of the state of retail and office environment at that time. And the direction at that point from the council was to work with the chamber to develop a scope and to come back with an economic development strategy and resource plan, which we've done. We've also met with staff from all of the city departments who have some role or responsibility relating to business assistance, and actually everyone who works for the city is an ambassador for the residents and the businesses in the community. Is one of the kind of takeaways from that process is that whether we're talking about the events and programming that the Parks Department does, the library, certainly development services, permitting, engineering, planning, and building, and all of the city departments and programs support business investment and job creation. It's really just a question of how we go about that in a systematic way so that we're coordinated and we have really a focus. So the proposed strategy is pulling together the really 6 areas of focus that we had talked with the council about previously, and that the chamber has put forth their initiative, and through the council's award of ARPA grant funds, we're proposing a partnership with the chamber to carry out this economic development strategy. The 6 parts of the plan, I won't discuss them in detail. You can see them here. The first area of focus is on business information, really sharing data and information between the city and its partners, including the chamber. And for the chamber to really take the lead on the business outreach and making sure we have a current inventory of businesses and space that is out there and available. The city maintains business license records, as you know. We share that information with the chamber. There's some benefit, mutual benefit actually, in continuing to do that. And the strategy would build on that. The chamber would conduct their annual business survey. They have staff who can actually help us by walking door to door actually, and meeting and greeting and just checking to see how folks are doing. And then through our quarterly meetings and check-ins with their staff, making sure we're all on the same page. We will also endeavor to update the retail and office market studies that we've produced in the past so that we have good data, and providing information to businesses, of course, prospective business owners, so that they're in a good position to find space and work with the city and be successful. So that first area is really about data and information sharing. Chamber taking a fairly substantial role on that, initially funded through their ARPA grant. Ongoing support would be needed actually to continue with that. So this is a financial ask and a proposal that we think is worthwhile for the city to consider, but at least in the first year, that ARPA grant would provide the seed funds for that to get started. Same goes for direct business assistance. The chamber would take the lead in this area with support from the city. That would include ongoing trainings and outreach, workshops to support the local business community. Through the pandemic, they demonstrated that they're very resourceful in standing up a business recovery center and connecting businesses with grants and other resources that were out there at that time. So the chamber has built capacity to do this. We believe, and speaking with Executive Director Hartman, we believe that they're well positioned to continue with this as we move out of the pandemic and into more of a ongoing economic development support role. Third area is on coordination and networking, and this is where the city does have some responsibilities and actually some leadership role, and continuing to network with organizations like Business Oregon and Greater Portland, Inc., and the Clackamas County Economic Development Agency to make sure that our public-facing economic strategy is aligned with the region, and we're also taking advantage of those resources that are out there. The fourth area is relating to permitting, and that's really just shorthand for development services. And you'll see in the report that, or in the plan, that there are a number of areas that we see are opportunities. I mean, there are areas where I feel that, I mean, from my experience in community development and planning and doing this for over 30 years, that our city is very customer-friendly, business-friendly. We do, however, have a very complex code, and our fees are among the highest in the region. So those are challenges, and I think our staff do a tremendous job in, you know, offsetting that with just very personalized service. When we have redevelopment projects, of course, that elevates the response because it's a partnership with the city. When it's not a redevelopment project, I feel like our staff, whether it's in planning, building, engineering, fire department, are all working together, and we actually meet together every week. We have a work ethic there that I think is unmatched in my experience in the communities I've worked with. However, there are these challenges, and one of the plan elements here is to do a full review. Audit's kind of a strong word, but I think it's appropriate here that we would audit our development code and our fees, and we would look to see where we can perhaps have a greater competitive advantage, where we can be more service or more business friendly while maintaining community standards. And that's really the balance that we've always tried to strike, and the councils have always managed to strike the right balance between community standards and high quality design with being business friendly. So that is a fairly significant task, a project that we're proposing that would be part of the strategy. It would possibly involve outside services where the planning department wouldn't have the capacity to do that, so we would seek outside services. That, along with all of the other tasks and deliverables in the strategy, are not tied to a specific due date or deliverable date, because we would like for you to consider this as you're going into goal setting and through the budget process, because some of the work that I'm describing does have a budget impact, and this being one of those. The fifth area is relating to planning and redevelopment, and this is really just taking a fresh look at our redevelopment district plans, including the East End redevelopment district downtown, the Lake Grove Village Center, and Foothills, because frankly, those plans have been in existence for a very long time. At least two of those three plans have been largely implemented, although there are some remaining projects, particularly in the East End redevelopment plan, that have not been implemented. The original vision for that area actually was developed in the mid-1980s, so that vision I think is held true, and the city has developed and redeveloped around that, and we've had a lot of success with that. Though it's time to take a fresh look at that, particularly given that we've reached our limit of bonded indebtedness in that district and with the East End, so it's timely. This would also afford an opportunity to really look at the vision for each of these areas. And with the complete rebuild of Boones Ferry Road through Lake Grove, we're already seeing redevelopment, and we were seeing redevelopment even leading up to that project, and that redevelopment district has performed very well. So it's time to take a look at that. And so that work would be, it could be fairly labor intensive, so it's really just a matter of kind of staging it so that you have the capacity as the city council or the redevelopment agency board staff has the capacity to deliver on this, and it's all coordinated with your budget. So again, that's why you're seeing kind of a conceptual scope and some suggested deliverables and a fairly wide price range on what that work might be, but not a specific deadline or timeline around it. The sixth and final area of the strategy relates to programming and promotions. So this is, last year when we were discussing this with the chamber, one of the thoughts was that, well, we need to focus on branding, and really what this does is it takes our existing brand and community events and programming, and it provides a way for the city and the chamber and all the other organizations in the community that do programming, whether it's the Lakewood Center for the Arts or the Heritage Council or the school district, and provides a way to coordinate. In the past, the city and other organizations have hosted an annual event, I think it was called Fusion, where you looked at the calendar and you made sure things were synchronized. And it was just a great way to coordinate. That's just an example of what some of this work might involve. The important takeaway on this point is that the chamber would largely take the lead, and the city would support, of course, and on certain projects and meetings and events, we would take turns hosting, depending on what the focus is there. But the chamber having capacity to really take the lead on this. So those are the 6 areas of the plan. Again, it's about data sharing, direct business assistance, coordination and networking with partner agencies and non-governmental organizations, development process, planning redevelopment, and programming and promotions. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. We are asking the council to consider adoption of Resolution 22-44.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Siegel. Questions, Councilor Winland?
Let Carrie do it. There. Am I on? There's no red button, red light. I have to say that this is probably one of the most favorite parts, certainly of this meeting, other than saying goodbye to Daniel and Jackie, which was kind of sad, but celebratory as well. This is, I have to say, this is probably hitting all the aspects of business development and the coordination with the chamber and the business community. This hits every cylinder that we need to hit. This is extremely well done, and I have to say, I was super impressed with all your focus groups with the staff, and I think it shows, if you go through all that detail, what a fabulous, professional, exceptional staff we have. I have to say that almost everything that I read in here was spot on, and more importantly, gave a overview of how things are so interconnected with everybody. And I'm very excited to see to have you work on this. And I think this kind of gets what I would call the partnership with the chamber more solidified, and the fusion of the city together. And it's just going to help our business community as well as the community as a whole. I do think that number 4, I'm really excited about you taking a look at with the permitting process and everything. I think one thing that I saw the thread through this whole thing for businesses was like a one-stop, clearly marketed list of what do I do if I want to have a business in Lake Oswego? Who do I have to see, and how do I do it? And I think pulling everything together like that is going to be very helpful to a business owner to know what they need to do and how they need to do it. Because small business owners have the idea of what they want to do. They don't know how to necessarily get it through from the city standpoint of view. And I think you've hit everything that needs to be done. So extremely impressive, and I'm fully supportive 100%.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Winland. That's great. Councilor Burke.
I definitely want to say I think this is a really good report. I really appreciate how it's kind of separating out different roles and responsibilities and where we need to maybe have more focus. And I think it's a good tool for us to use at goal setting to determine where maybe do we want to put our efforts in, because obviously we can't do everything, especially with everything that's on our plate right now, but to really help us identify areas that we might want to drill down with. So I really think you gave us an amazing tool to do that, and I don't know that we could have done it effectively without this. So I appreciate that, and again, the clarification between the chamber and the city as well, I think is really important, and it's, I presume that the chamber was involved and has agreed to everything. And, I think it's great that we have the ARPA dollars for this year, and we'll just need to figure out how to make sure we continue this in the future. So I just want to thank you and your team for all your work.
That's right. It's a good, Councilor.
No, yeah, I just...
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. I as a business owner that's struggling sometimes with some city problems, I know that what you were saying is true, that, for example, planning is really helping us develop a plan that we need to do in our own business, even though, we have, it would have been very difficult without the help of Jessica, mainly, and all planning, but Jessica, now I know better. Even in acquiring a new building, I have to come, Jessica, what should we do? And you say, this, I know about all the buffer zones and all those things, thanks to what you're doing. But the only question I have, is, and you know, I'm pretty sure you develop, is like the East and urban renewal. What do you think we should do? Like retire or just revive it, and how?
Well, I think that's a much larger discussion, you know, what to do. There's a financial calculus and there are projects and priorities that you'd want to consider, yeah.
Okay.
He's not going to tell you.
Okay.
Not yet.
Fair enough, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Yeah, I think this is a great base to start from. Like Councilor Burdick said, you know, as we go into goal setting, obviously a lot of these programs, you know, through this draft are being funded by, you know, through ARPA dollars, and you know, obviously those are one-time dollars, and so we'll have to put together an ongoing funding strategy. But this gives us a great chance to continue to build upon that relationship and communications with the chamber and these other community partners, so we can have a better sense of what tools we'll need to continue the work down the road. I see other, you know, partnerships too on this plan for instance, our DEI advisory board, on how they could work on the economic development strategy, thinking about tools, trainings, other actions that we can use to attract a diverse workforce and for local businesses to be inclusive to, you know, a wide range of customers. I hear only positive things from folks that work with planning and building services about the level of customer service and what a joy they find to working in the community. But I also note that a lot of the folks have been working in the community for a long time, and sometimes wonder if some of our processes, so like once they get to know it, it's great, you know, and the staff, of course, so helpful. But for people who don't do business here but want to do business here, it's very arduous, and it's kind of a big barrier to overcome. And so maybe we can think of that approach too, how we're not, as we're improving processes, kind of making the community more accessible to a wider range of folks that would probably love to work here and you know, just are a little daunted, you know, by the complexity of things here. Yeah, but I'm very supportive. I appreciate. I see Executive Director Hartman sitting in the back there. Appreciative of all the work that she is doing with the team at the chamber over these past couple of years, especially. The chamber has just done a fantastic job in outreach and support of the local business community, and they really are the face that is out there welcoming new businesses, you know, touching existing ones, and it goes, that, you know, little human connection goes a long way, and we appreciate them going out there because, of course, you know, we touch them too, but, you know, in different ways. Okay. So thank you, and thank you for your work on this, Director Siegel, this year.
So I think as his last, this is the last motion of his career in Lake Oswego.
You asked for the motion?
Yes.
Move to adopt Resolution 2244, resolution of the City Council of Lake Oswego adopting an economic development strategy and resource plan.
Second.
All right, very good. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Is Councilor Mann still on? Okay, and she vote? Yeah, okay, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Director Siegel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Hartman. Thank you. Okay, oh, well, you're probably not going too far. Our next item is the study session on update of the state of the urban forest. Of course, Director Siegel will be presenting this along with our contract arborist, Morgan Olin, and Chad Tinsley from Parametrics. And
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'd like to introduce the team here. Again, Scott Siegel, Community Development Director. And this, to my left is Morgan Holin, our contract arborist, city's contract arborist, and a deputy project manager in some ways on this project and contributed a lot to the study. And on my far left there is Chad Tinsley. He's the project manager with Parametrics, and he was supported by a fairly robust team. We had folks from Cascadia Partners who provided the climate analysis and the greenhouse gas analysis, and Prager and Associates, certified arborist, was part of the team as well. For the city, this was truly a multidisciplinary, multi-department effort because the urban forest is something that we all touch in some way. So we had contributions from planning, and so Jessica Numanoglu, Deputy Community Development Director, is here this evening. We had our professional staff, Daphne Cecil and Eric Olson, Long Range Planning Manager. From the Parks Department, Megan Big John, who's here, your Parks Manager. And this work was coordinated with the Habitat Management Plan that you heard about earlier this evening. And from engineering, Sonia Johnson is our stormwater specialist. She's an associate engineer and contributed to the project. And Amanda Watson, our sustainability program manager. So all of those departments were involved in some way in this project, which comes from the council goal to update the urban and community forestry plan based on the 2022 State of the Urban Forest Report. So this is the State of the Urban Forest Report that we're presenting. And really, I think the most important thing to say about the report is that it's a study, it's not a plan. And so it's a fairly technical study. It's intended to provide what I would describe as a common base of knowledge and understanding around the urban forest, to provide data, metrics, a common vocabulary. So when we talk about trees and we talk about the urban forest, we're all sort of understanding that in the same way, because there's a lot of different perceptions of the urban forest and trees, and what is old, what is younger growth. It's just, there's a lot to keep up with, and really with the climate changing and some of the severe weather that we've experienced, there are a lot of changes that are happening in the environment, which Chad will talk about, that I think have people very concerned and very excited in some ways, but very concerned about how we're doing with our tree canopy and how we're managing the forest. And I think based on what I've seen in this research, I think we have a lot to be very proud of. In fact, other communities are trying to attain the level of urban forest and canopy growth that we have. We're trying to maintain it or nurture it in some ways. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and hand it over to Chad for his presentation. And one other point, I'm sorry. So this is intended to provide input into the urban and community forestry plan. So what you'll be hearing tonight is a large base of information that would then become part of the plan, or would inform the plan that would be developed through a community process. So that's really what this is for. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for having me today to talk about this. The Urban Forest Report itself is about an 85-page document. What I'll be sharing today is a story map, which is really a view that is more engaging for the public to really be able to access and scroll through the same information. There's going to be a lot of words on the page, so I'm going to move through it pretty fast, but the idea is to show how much information is in the report and highlight some of the topics and some of the key findings that we had. The different chapters from the report are all linked up here at the top. So following the executive summary, we'll go through, talk about urban forest benefits, urban forest threats, some of the efforts that the city has done in terms of stewardship and regulations to protect the urban forest. We'll walk through our urban tree canopy assessment, which is really the analysis of the amount of tree canopy that we have across the city. I'll talk about carbon sequestration or storage, that our soils and the tree canopy holds to offset some of the greenhouse gas effects. And then I'll highlight some of the community programs that help the urban forest throughout the city. So I'll scroll through some of this purpose of the report, since Scott highlighted that. I'll talk just a little bit about some of the major report findings. We found that the citywide tree canopy increased from 48.6% to 53.4% from 2014 to 2019. Those are the years that we have an urban tree canopy model that was created using aerial and LiDAR. So we'll talk about that during the urban tree canopy assessment chapter. Lake Oswego has the highest tree canopy coverage in the Portland region when you compare it against other cities of comparable size. And we found that the canopy cover is very well distributed as well. All of the neighborhoods have an urban tree canopy cover of over 40%, and they experienced an increase in acreage over that 5-year time period from 2014 to 2019. Part of the report, we acknowledge some of the previous efforts that this report builds on. Scott mentioned the 2000 Urban and Community Forestry Plan. Within that plan, there were quite a few goals that were developed. So part of this report indicates where focus has been done and where progress has been made towards some of those specific goals that the 2007 report highlighted. And then also we provided some information and the key findings from the 2009 report that this report provides an update to. The first main chapter of information is on the urban forest benefits. So we highlight the different environmental benefits, including air quality, water quality, and habitat. We also talk about the different social benefits, including health, safety, and developing a sense of community. And then the economic benefits, including increased property values, business activity, and the ecosystem service benefits that the tree canopy provides. We used a USDA Forest Service tool called iTree. I see I've got a graphic not loading, so hopefully we won't have too many issues with that. But it highlights in dollar amounts some of the ecosystem values in terms of air quality, water, and carbon. Some of the key findings from this chapter were that the trees provided a wide range of environmental, social, and economic benefits that have been thoroughly documented. Many of these benefits are quantifiable. We highlighted one example here. Lake Oswego's urban forest provides about 155 million gallons of avoided stormwater runoff annually, which is the equivalent of about 230 Olympic-sized swimming pools. We also noted that it increased property values, rental income, and business activity across the city, and research shows that trees, especially street trees, provide a lot of social benefits, including improved health outcomes, safer neighborhoods, reduced vehicle speeds, and stronger bonds between neighbors. Yeah, I'm going to switch over to kind of a backup here because I can see that the graphics aren't loading, so bear with me for 1 second. We have it loaded. Can never count on technology in these situations when it really counts.
We love pictures.
We like pictures. We want to see them. So the next chapter dealt with major threats to the urban forest. You can see here we have an image that was provided through a tool that the USDA provides that highlights some of the projected urban forest threats that the city will be that the city will have to deal with over the next 40 years. We highlighted insects and disease as a major threat, air temperature and aridity. Development is anticipated to cause about a 10% decline in urban forest canopy throughout urban Clackamas County, and then ice storms. Obviously, we had an example of that in February of 2021, and you can see some of the cleanup effort associated with that in that photo on the right there. We also highlighted wildfire as an urban forest threat and mentioned some of the efforts that the City of Lake Oswego Fire Department is doing as they recommend reducing fuel loads to create defensible spaces around structures. And then we highlighted one particular wildfire fuel reduction effort that was done with a partnership between the Oswego Lake Watershed Council and Mountain Park Homeowners Association. This was the Mountain Park Fuel Reduction and Land Resilience Project. And then lastly, we've talked quite a bit already today about English ivy, and then there's a few other documented invasive plants. Throughout this report, we highlight quite a few of the different efforts that the city has done and the different partners across the community to help remove quite a bit of that ivy. The next chapter deals with tree stewardship and regulatory efforts by the city. The first section of this chapter shows the efforts that the city has done to plant trees within parks and the public right-of-way. You can see in the graph on the right here, the green bar shows the number of trees planted by year in parklands, and then at the top in orange there, the number added in the public right-of-way, and then the black dot there represents the number of trees removed in those areas by year. So the key finding here was that there were about 27,000 trees planted in these areas between 2017 and 2021. And about 1,500 trees were removed during that time period. So a planting to removal ratio of about 18:1. Also from 2017 to 2021, we had about 330 acres in active restoration each year, with about 328,000 native plants being planted during that time. I won't go into too much depth in the stewardship of natural areas. Obviously a great picture here. Beautiful. On the right. Just excellent.
Not of the people,
best one in the
tree.
It's amazing. We highlighted the backyard habitat program. There are about 2,000 acres, or sorry, about 200 acres of properties within the city that participate in this program. The goal of this to really help restore backyard habitats with naturescaping and adding a lot of native plants. We also highlighted our heritage tree program, which was established in 1997. There are currently 42 trees, somewhere in that area, that are in the program, 41, I can see it now here. And within the last year, one significant development was that the city started providing the opportunity to get heritage tree preservation grant fundings to help diagnose, treat, and manage and care for trees that are designated as heritage trees. Those grants totaled about $14,000 this year. The next section highlights some of the regulatory efforts that have been done, including updates to the tree code over the past years, documentation of what the sensitive lands program does to protect trees, to help protect and conserve wildlife habitat. And then the next section goes on to document tree removal permit applications by type. So we highlighted the different types of permits that can be used to remove trees and the types of activities that are associated with each of those. We have a few different charts here. I'll skip this one and go to the next one that I had the story map. This one shows the actual number of trees removed by permit application type from 2017 to 2021 for each year. And then you can see that the different permit application types associated with each of those. So we had a fairly even distribution of trees removed from the various permit application types. In the chart on the bottom right here, you can see for the type 2 permit removals, which are those trees that are removed for development and landscaping. You can see that the number 1 species removed was Doug fir. Out of the 2,696 total trees removed through those type 2 permits in that 5-year period, about 24% of those were Doug firs. So the key findings from this section showed that about 15,600 trees were permitted for removal during that 5-year time period. About 20% were type 1, which are trees that are smaller than 15 inches in diameter. 24% were dead trees, 12% were hazardous or emergency removals, 16% were invasive species, and 17% were type 2s for landscaping or development. One significant takeaway was Doug fir being the most removed species. The next section shows us the mitigation tree plantings for those type 2s. So for each type 2 permit, it's required that you plant a tree in its place, or if there's not space that allows, you're sometimes allowed to pay into the city's tree fund, which can be used for a variety of different things. One significant takeaway here, you can see the chart on the right here shows the species of mitigation trees planted, with dogwoods being the most common at about 30%. And then another key finding was that of those 2,373 trees planted, about 65% were native species. The right here shows something that's fairly significant. You can see that Doug fir, which was the most removed tree through the type 2s, and the Pacific dogwood, which was the most planted tree. You can see the difference in the ecosystem benefits that a single mature tree from each of those species has. So the city really wants to emphasize that where space does allow it, if a large stature tree like a Doug fir is removed, that another tree that provides similar ecosystem or other urban forest benefits is planted in its place. The next section is fun. This is the urban tree canopy assessment. So this is where we looked at the tree canopy coverage, comparing the city to other cities in the metro area, and then also providing breakdowns of tree canopy cover change from 2014 to 2019 across the city and within these 8 different land classifications. You can see here, this graphic shows the overall city tree canopy from the 2019 model, and then that little box there shows really the level of detail within that. So it's a 97% accuracy based on a random sampling of about 200 points. The major takeaway from the regional canopy analysis was that Lake Oswego ranks second amongst cities in metro area, only getting beat out by Durham. So if you compare it to other cities of about the same size, you can see on the chart there that it leads all those. The map also shows that same statistics. You can see based on Metro's canopy, which provided a little bit different value than the one that the city did, but Lake Oswego, they're sitting at 48%, where you can see other cities of comparable size ranging anywhere from about 20% to 40% across the metro region. From the citywide canopy analysis, we found that from 2014 to 2019, the city went from about 48.6% canopy coverage to 53.4%. We also broke the urban tree canopy out into different height classes. These height classes reflect the same breaks that are done in the city's right tree in the right place document. So you can see in that bar chart there how many acres of canopy in both 2014 and 2019 stack up in each. Looking at the chart there, you can see the short zone, the cell on the far right. That shows that there was a 51% canopy increase in that short zone. I'll show an image here that kind of shows how that is able to occur in the urban tree canopy model, because it very much is a pretty impressive mark. The only canopy zone that we saw a decrease was in the medium tall zone, so that's the canopy between 50 and 80 feet. One important thing to point out there is that it's not necessarily all canopy that's been removed or lost between 2014 and 2019. That could be canopy that was around that 75-foot mark that's now grown into that next zone where you see a 4% increase. So here's a map that shows the distribution of the tree canopy based on the canopy height class. The green outlines show the parks and natural areas. You can see quite a bit of the tallest tree canopy indicated by the red being in those areas. We also provided a breakout of evergreen and deciduous distribution. So you can see that the city had a pretty even mix there. Across the different neighborhoods, and you'll see this trend across all the different land classifications, we saw an increase from 2014 to 2019 in every single neighborhood, and all neighborhoods were over 40% canopy, which is significant considering looking at all the other cities in the area. Very few of them had over a 40% canopy. There were five different neighborhoods that did show a decrease in canopy within areas over 50 feet. Across all the different zoning categories, we also saw an increase from 2014 to 2019. This is easiest to see in the map here. You can see all the different breakouts of canopy cover in the bottom right. The highest increase from 2014 to 2019 occurred in the residential medium density zones, which are kind of the darker yellow on the map. Across the different business districts, we also saw an increase from 2014 to 2019. I think this is really significant because these are areas where there has been a lot of densification and development from 2014 to 2019. So it's impressive that the city has been able to still maintain the urban tree canopy in these areas. We also broke out the canopy in these different outdoor recreation and conservation areas. So this is a GIS layer that's maintained by Metro. We also added in specifically the city-managed parks and open spaces. The canopy again increased across all of these different categories except for golf courses. And the parks and natural areas managed by the city showed an increase of 13 acres. So obviously that we highlighted some of the great work by the city in Megan's talk, so you can see those efforts really paying off here based on that. We also analyzed tree cover within the road right-of-way as a metric of measuring street trees. Obviously, it's very difficult and time-consuming to try to do a full street tree inventory. So this is a way that we can really monitor chains of street tree canopies change over time. We did this both within the road right-of-way, which is highlighted by the green in this map. And then the purple inside of that is actually the amount of tree canopy that overhangs the paved road surfaces. That's significant because it provides a lot of other benefits like shading the streets and sidewalks, and also mitigating a lot of the rainfall that would run onto those streets and into the local streams in the city. The city has a coverage of over 40% within the right-of-way and 25% overhanging the paved surfaces. Both of those meet most of the goals that you see established in different research that we came across. So this is a really helpful graphic to understand how we were able to see so much canopy change, especially in the short zone. So the urban tree canopy model captures everything over 10 feet height and considers that part of the urban tree canopy coverage. So you can see two different instances that would occur in a canopy increase here. On the left here, highlighted as location 1, is where that tree crown has grown outward. So in the map here, the dark green represents areas where the 2014 and the 2019 tree canopy overlap. The orange are areas where there was tree canopy loss from 2014 to 2019, and then that kind of turquoisey are where we are seeing new tree canopy in the model. So you can see in location number 2 here, we had trees here in 2014, but they were too small to be captured in the tree canopy model, and they're also not providing all the same urban forest benefits as a tree that's over 10 feet now. You can see the size of those trees towering over those structures now in 2019 and are now being included in the 2019 tree canopy model. We also looked at street tree equity. So we basically compared some different socioeconomic, health, and climate implications, looking at low income, employment, race, age, climate, and health across all the census blocks, the census block groups within the city, and came up with a tree equity score. So basically everything in the map that scores 100 has achieved street tree equity based on a goal of 40% canopy coverage within the road right-of-way. And then the lower values not only represent areas that are below 40%, but also areas that have a greater amount of those historically underserved populations based on socioeconomic, health, and other status that I highlighted here on the previous page. You can see that a lot of areas of the city have actually achieved that street tree equity score. A lot of the areas with the lower scores are on the western edge of the urban services boundary, and quite a few of those are actually in unincorporated areas of the city. Within all of the watersheds across the city, we saw an increase from 2014 to 2019. One significant takeaway was that the Tualatin River watershed, while it has the lowest overall canopy, it had the biggest increase from 2014 to 2019. And then we also provided the breakout within all the sensitive lands areas. This is super important, as highlighted in some of the previous discussions today. The sensitive lands really provide a lot of habitat and also shade our streams, which is important for fish. The urban tree canopy increased from 87%, which was already very good in 2014, to 89% in 2019. You can see those areas on the map and how they correlate with areas around streams, especially. We also highlighted a previous effort that I worked on with the city last year, where we actually quantified the effect of stream shade and compared those to stream targets that are established by Oregon DEQ. You can see all the dark blue dots along streams on the map are where we're currently meeting shade targets for streams. All the red dots are areas where there's currently a lack of stream shade and we're not quite meeting those shade targets. So this is a map that the city can use to, if there's ever going to be any restoration or planting efforts in the future, they have this to look at and see kind of where some of those, where some of the most beneficial areas would be to focus those efforts. The next chapter deals with carbon sequestration or storage, and gives an explanation of how trees store carbon. This is really important because carbon is one of the primary greenhouse gases that are emitted through human activities, such as burning fossil fuels through transportation and energy that and energy to power our homes. So we tried to put those findings of the base carbon storage into some numbers that people can understand. So the amount of carbon that's currently stored in the plants and soils of Lake Oswego is equivalent to the greenhouse gas emissions from about 419,000 gas-powered engine vehicles on the roads for 1 year. So it's pretty significant. And then we have a couple maps here showing the above ground carbon per acre by parcel here. You can see that the dark green areas are storing more carbon to help offset some of those greenhouse gases. Those correlate very well with the canopy height and density maps that you saw earlier. And then the soil type also plays a role in how much carbon is stored per acre. So that's what this map is showing. We also ran a few different test scenarios, and one of the consulting partners on this provided a tool that the city can actually use to estimate the carbon offsets for different tree planting scenarios. One of the examples that we used was the plantings that were done along the 1 mile stretch of right-of-way for the Boones Ferry Road effort. And then we put that into context again of the amount of carbon that those trees will hold by the year 2040, and tried to provide those into the same kind of values of, you know, it offsetting about 92 gas-powered vehicles or the power of 83 homes for 1 year. In our final chapter here, we highlighted a lot of the community programs that are, that relate to supporting urban forest health and also help shape the identity of the city. So we highlighted the fact that Lake Oswego has been celebrated as a tree city through the National Arbor Day Foundation for the last 33 years. We highlighted some of the Arbor Month events that the city has done over the past years. Talked a little bit about forestry at the farmers market and the education that provides to the public, and highlighted some of the urban community and forestry workshops that have been held over the last 14 years as well. And then lastly, we referenced the tree care and maintenance site where the public or community groups can go to get a lot of helpful information. And with that, I'll pass things back to Scott.
Thank you, Chad, and that really covers our presentation. To kind of loop it back to where we go from here. If, the council's prioritized updating the urban community forestry plan. And so when we looked at the plan, we reflected on all of this new information. I think we came to the conclusion that, that plan is still sound, and the elements that it covered with stewardship, forest health, canopy, maintenance, managing invasive species, and integrating this work with our other plans is still, all of that is still valid. And so really what we would like to do is take this information, work with the community members who are engaged in this work, and update the plan. We shouldn't have to do a lot of new original research. We've done that. Now it's on to policy. So that's really where I think we go next.
It's great. Okay. Thank you. You did such a great job.
Thanks. The story map was even more fun, so I'm sorry that didn't work. But
no, it was very good.
There were sliders and stuff.
You covered so much. I hope there are no questions. So much great data. And all I can think about is Durham. And that is the target. Our sites. We are going Durham.
Oh, Durham. They're going down.
We will take them down. They better watch out. Yeah, they're on notice. Well, we're coming after them.
If they take one tree down, I think we've got them.
That's true. It's a much smaller area.
Yeah, we can go help that. Right. We know what we're doing after the meeting. Okay. Well, does anyone, Councilor Wendland, please.
Can I just ask a couple questions on the, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Councilor Mans. Go ahead.
Councilor Wendland.
No, go. I defer to my senior. Counselor.
Senioritis. A question that I have in the report, and it was a beautiful report. I have to say that I nerded out over it. It was just lovely. Couple of questions. What do you feel was really the big illumination of the work? Like, what did you walk away with and go, wow, I didn't expect to see that?
For me, it was definitely the change from 2014 to 2019 in that short zone. And that really shows the efforts that the city has done, all of that street tree planting, the fact that it brought up the percent overall that much, shows that work actually really does do something. It's not just something to sort of check a box as part of some effort.
One additional question is, I noticed that the biggest mitigation tree, or I should say, the largest number of mitigation trees are dogwood, it would seem. And they're lovely, but is there a point that we really have to start, and I think this was addressed in the report, looking at planting conifers or Doug firs or trees that are going to get large and in appropriate places, like say city-owned properties or whatever the case may be?
I can speak to that, Councilor Mans, and that's something that we're really focused on too. And the challenge, of course, is that on a lot of sites that are being developed, there's not a lot of space. Sure. Really, within the limits of what the development code requires to plant large stature trees. We do see large stature trees planted on those sites, and we've required that as mitigation before. But I think that, the dogwoods are native trees, but they will never reach that height or store, that much carbon. So, we're looking for ways, I think as we go through and update the plan, we'll be looking for strategies that rebalance that, because there is sort of an optimal distribution of trees, and you don't want to have all, large stature evergreen trees. You want to have a urban forest that has different strata. But that is something that we're looking at.
Great, thank you so much. Councilor Wendland.
Thank you, Senior Councilor Mans. On the tree mitigation part, when it comes to replanting trees, and this is maybe a slightly loaded question, but is it better that we have people plant their own trees, or is it better because of all these maps that you have where you can place trees to be more strategic? Would it be better to have them write a check to us and we plant the tree where it's supposed to be, so that we can try to make some of those like red areas green? Does that make sense? I mean, and I'm mainly talking about residential where they, have to do development code and mitigate trees and things like that.
Councilor Wendland, so we're talking about replanting or planting on private property.
Right.
Yeah, so, I think the development, or excuse me, the tree code does provide some authority or some direction to where the city can prescribe mitigation. So certain species of trees or size of trees at planting. And that's an area where, you could look at that. You could look at that as a policy question and say, should the city have more involvement with that? Some communities, urban forestry programs or departments, they're much larger cities, they actually do go in and, plant the street tree in the park strip, and they, there's a, fees that cover that. It's, we don't have a department that does that, but I think it would be a large resource requirement for the city to do that. I don't know if the city manager has anything to add.
No, okay. Then the other question I have is, we did have the ice storm after the survey, and obviously it's going to affect each community slightly differently, but ours, we have the most trees of almost anyone. Is that more nature, that the destruction of the trees that fell down? Is that kind of like nature saying, okay, these were weak trees? To the person in the middle who has all the answers, who's the arborist. So,
Well, even healthy trees suffered during the ice storm. So it was really just about the force and the weight and what was too much. And I think in some of our tree removal permit statistics, you can see how in 2021 there were a greater number of emergency permits and hazard permits. So that's definitely reflected there. But it's hard to speculate about the amount of actual canopy cover lost until we do that next LiDAR flyover and do the next update. And I think this report really sets the stage for us to do that on an ongoing, regular, periodic basis. And we definitely lost a lot of trees with the ice storm and had storm damage take out significant canopies, but we are also seeing a lot of recovery for the trees that are left and that were structurally pruned. And I'm kind of surprised when I drive around. You can definitely see less of the evidence of the ice storm even 1 year later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say, looking back to that 2007, urban forestry report and the action items, you talked about those in the presentation. But really a lot of thanks to the past leaders and community members who worked on that plan, because so much has been done from that time. And seeing, I think it had the canopy coverage at that time at 39%. So seeing where we've come from 2007 to well, to 2019, not today, is great, thanks to those policies and actions that really have involved so many different segments of the community. But we recognize this is the first step. We also recognize it's been a long time. I mean, I don't know if we should be waiting this long, from 2007 to 2023 to be updating these plans, but it did in some ways serve us well. But I'm glad we're here now taking this first step, and we'll bring this to goal setting so we can make sure we can resource this and provide space for the community to perform the rest of the update to the forestry plan in conjunction with these other plans and working with the natural resource plan and whatnot. So it's great. Yeah, thank you for the great work. Any other questions, comments? Okay,
I am impressed, but I also think that we should do more because there have been a lot of trees that were cut by developers, by regular people who are, almost now, multiple times we have an appeal of a tree that's cut or something, and I am not sure if we are following through the people who have a type 2 permit, cut the tree and mitigate. What are the evidence that we are going and see that they are planting and what they plant has grown? That's something, and even though we have like 53%, it's all relative, because you can have more trees that developed from a year from like a space of 5 years. That doesn't mean that we are doing well. Maybe it should be 10% growth. Maybe, it's it depends on where we are. It's not 1 + 1 = 2 here. It can be 1 + 1 = maybe 1. Because, so I think we should be more vigilant, knowing, and I am very grateful of what you've done. It's wonderful, the storage of carbon. And I think that's the thing we should show people, that how important are trees. And, the more we are cutting, the less we will have the opportunity to save on the footprint. And I think, it's not time to say, we are like Jerome. I think we have to be more vigilant. And it means we need to check again the tree code and, work more to avoid cutting trees in Lake Oswego. There are many trees that are cut there. The golf course, they cut 74 trees, blanket. And those are things we have to denounce and not come here and say, yes, we are the best. I don't think, I'm not. You did a wonderful work, scientific, all three of you. I mean, this is great. When I look at it, I see as someone who loves the trees and who come from, a belief that trees are as important as our own lives. So when I see that, I'm very happy that children should see the storage of carbon and the release of oxygen in the atmosphere. That's what trees are for. But we continue to cut them. 73 in one time because we want to have a bigger golf course. That's shameful, and it has to be denounced. And also people, because I want to have a nice house, I cut 5 trees. That's where I'm coming from, even though the code or the law give them that. But thank you for your work and keep up, the good work. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron.
Our next study session is the Parks and Recreation Capital Improvement Project Funding. Joining us, we have Parks Director Andrew Holm.
Oh yeah, just leave them up here.
Cool. Good evening again.
Good evening. Mayor and Councilors. Ivan Anderholm, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here tonight during the study session to present where we are with our 2019 May Parks Bond and where we're at with our capital projects and our expenditures toward that bond. My report, obviously you have my report, so I will go through it. Essentially, I wish I could be here and say, oh, yay, and everything, but unfortunately, that's not going to be necessarily my tone, although I'm going to try to keep it as upbeat as I possibly can. So basically, back in 2019, we passed the bond. In early 2020, the council was given the opportunity through the Parks Board, a recommendation of prioritization of spending the bond on various types of projects. Those projects were all within the 2019 bond. The main three areas were acquisition of new parkland, renovation and replacement of existing facilities, and new recreation facilities and parks. In that plan, obviously we had some prioritized projects, and in those, I do want to go through what we've been able to accomplish and what is, in process now. So in the area of replacement of facilities within parks, we were able to accomplish replacement of some key facilities that were beyond their useful life. East Beluga, George Rogers restroom facilities. We were also able to replace a critical launch dock at the Water Sports Center and are in the process of replacing the largest and most popular shelter that we have in our park system in George Rogers Park. You're all aware of the Adult Community Center, which was a complete renovation down to the stud, reorientation. We have completed and will be having a public grand opening in late January of the tennis center renovation, which added not only space, but provided ADA access to the facility. We are in process of the golf course renovation project and enlargement of the driving range, as well as reconfiguring the golf course from a 18-hole par 3 to a 9-hole executive course with 3 par 3 holes. We were able to acquire a property, the Yates property, 1107 Yates, and add that to Helen Ann Woods. We are also in the process right now of the renovation of the golf clubhouse building. We'll be renovating that for better ADA access and then as flexible both community programming space and also a rentable space on that facility. And then included in some of those dollars that have been expended in two main projects that I'm going to talk to you about tonight is the Rasique Park project and the LORAC. Obviously, we've invested funds in those in the design engineering of those projects. To date, the total committed investment of the parks bonds is approximately a little over 13 million of what we anticipate to be 31.2 million after interest and premiums for the bonds. So going into these two projects, obviously these two projects were the most complicated of the prioritized projects. The LORAC project itself began with negotiations with Lake Oswego School District, both for a construction and an operation IGA. That did take some time in order to get those together, in order to put us in a place where both you as a council and the school board were comfortable with us going out and actually soliciting design. We were able to do that in, I lost my, 2020. So actually about a year and a half after we passed the bond, we actually signed a contract with Scott Edward Architecture to do that. After we started that project, we got into that project, and through community involvement, We looked at both the previous work that had been done, that the school district had done, both in siting the combined recreation aquatic center, but then also architectural design. Taking that into account, we took that plan forward, and with public input, we came before the council with a plan that indicated a larger warm water pool, obviously the school district's competitive pool to meet the district and the community's needs, and then an enlarged dry recreation facility that included a gymnasium. We were given direction to pursue that with our architectural team. We did that. And in October of this year, we had all of our completion. We went out to bid on the 18th, and then we received proposals on November 15th, which we opened to evaluate and qualify contractors, and then opened their price proposals on October 18th. I think that the council is aware, but this is the first public point where we're announcing it, other than on our bid website, that project came in approximately a little over 19% over what the engineer's estimate was. In dollars, we're talking over $6 million over. Not simultaneously, but started about a year later in 2021, we started the design process on Reseek Park. In that process was also a very robust public engagement process. Started out as an athletic field and some improvements, neighborhood park-like improvements through engagement with the community, the adjacent neighborhood. The design developed into an athletic field, associated parking, as well as an enlarged play area, community meeting area, covered shelter. And we also came to council after that engagement, and in October of 2021, we brought that before the council and asked council to weigh in on possible additions to that park that we had heard through the community engagement, and were given direction by city council to move forward with adding a community skate park to that project. The community skate park was, we contracted for a design build because of the technical nature of that and the delivery method within the project. We actually awarded that contract in January of 2022. The design is complete, ready to go. Also during the final development of bid plans and engineering for Reseek Park, we had an opportunity that came upon us from the city of Portland to take advantage of a donation of athletic field turf, which we did go ahead and accept that donation, and then looked at the installation of that turf as an owner-furnished contractor installed, or an owner-furnished portion of that project, which reduced the cost of the turf installation by approximately $200,000. So this was before we bid the project, but understanding that that was an integral part of the project. In September, we went out to bid in 2022, the end of September, for the Reseek project. Ultimately, we amended our solicitation and opened our bids on November 9th of 2022, so about a week before the LORAC. And when we opened those bids, we were actually pretty shocked. We had an engineer's estimate for the contractor work of about $3.7 million, and the apparent low bid was 6.1, significantly over what we had estimated. Doing our due diligence as we do when we open bids that are off. We go to the contractor and to our design firms and we sit down and we take a look at it. And we look at many different critical factors, one being was the plan set complete? Were there errors in it? In the case of the Reseek project, we found that there were some errors. There were some engineering errors and other errors that made it difficult for contractors to really hone in on what the price of the park would be. And also looking at the discrepancy in price, which was about 40% over our engineer's estimate. We did make the decision to cancel on December 7th, cancel that solicitation. However, this evening we're asking, we'll get to that, but we made that decision based on that. We didn't feel that it was very untenable for us to move forward with that contract, and there was no way to rectify the differences between what our engineer's estimate and the cost that was presented to us. So where that puts us right now, and I'll get into the funds that are available, is about $12 to $13 million over what we were expecting for the combined projects. We have done an analysis of the dollars that are available, both bond dollars, Lake Oswego School District contribution to the LORAC, SDCs that are available, general fund dollars that were set aside in the parks budget, as well as general fund capital reserve that was set aside for the LORAC project, and come up with an amount that we have available. The two projects as they were proposed in bid would have taken approximately $58 million to complete. The dollars that we have available that Parks has access to is about $43.3 million. That's a shortfall for the two projects of approximately $14.5 million, a little over $14.5 million. So in lieu of having an untenable bid on the Reseek project, we're working toward how to rectify that. So there's work that needs to be done. If at some point down the road we want to bring that project forward, we need to really rectify the errors that are in the engineering design so that we know exactly what it is, and so that prospective contractors know what they're going to be bidding on. And I think that can be done with time. But even with that project off of the table, and not moving forward with that project and dedicating the funds from that project, which are included in the $43.3 million, we are still, for the LORAC project, approximately $3.6 million short of being able to accomplish that project. In lieu of that, there are a couple different things. So in the report, I indicate that the total cost with a 10% contingency of the project is a little over $47 million. We would actually, within the process that we did for submittals, we did have both additive and deductive alternatives. Obviously, the deductive alternatives, we didn't have a whole bunch of them, but we did have two that accounted for about $112,000. So really the target number under the current bid without any value engineering is in your report, and it's $46.9 million, rounding up slightly. But that leaves us at about a $3.6 million deficit. We have, based on this, we did, for the LORAC project in particular, we had the opportunity on December 12th, last Monday, to meet with a group of representatives from the school district, including both staff, the superintendent, and a board member, along with Councilor Wendland, myself, the city manager, and our finance director to discuss the project. From that meeting, we got an indication from the school district that they support the project moving forward. Obviously, myself and Tony Vanderberg, who is their executive director of project management for the district, emphasized that there is some value engineering to do. And primarily that value engineering isn't about reducing program. We're trying to avoid reducing the usability to the public, but rather things that we can look at. So we've created and worked with our consultant team and also our parent selected contractor, and had a meeting with them, and we have created a list of value engineering ideas, and so we're now vetting those. I can say that the contractor has already put firm costs and values to those, so they turned around really quickly to do that. And so we anticipate that there will be, and I'm just going to say in the range of magnitude, probably $800 to $1.3 million worth of value engineering that we think we can do without affecting program and the experience that our customers and the community will have. I will also note, and I've been given clearance to say this to you, but the Lake Oswego School Board did have a meeting with their staff and did direct staff to work with us to redirect or direct some of the remaining 2017 bond proceeds that the district has after their latest projects that they approved. So I am in contact with Tony Vanderberg, and we'll be in contact with him to identify what that number would be. He's working on that as they just awarded their last two capital projects that were going to be billed against the 2017 bond. So we do have an indication that the district will help us close the gap. And so I do want to talk a little bit about alternatives. In my staff report, I indicated, if we can develop a funding strategy to close the gap on the LORAC project while value engineering the project, obviously that's an alternative that we could continue moving in that direction. I think that in the environment we're in and the indication from the school district to do that we're in a strong position that we may be able to close that. The other, alternative that needs to be brought up is we could cancel this solicitation and at a later date do the value engineering and then take it back out. I will note that some of the disadvantages of that, and I'm not, is that for the bid window for this type of project, we're really looking at getting it back out to bid by mid to late January at the very latest. The changes that we would make without making programmatic changes, i.e. some of the value engineering, the general consensus in talking with not only our consultants, but with Tony from the school district is that we don't think that there would be a significant savings that would be seen in doing that. We can accomplish that savings by doing value engineering with the identified contractor. And then what that would mean would be really the rebid would be next winter, would be if we were going to make significant changes. I'll tell you that the timeline in order to do that, if we're talking about making any changes to program, will involve a significant amount of community engagement, re-engagement with the community, and will also result, and I'm kind of go on a flyer here, but would result in some type of renegotiation with the school district on both construction and operation IGAs. So there's a lot there.
And a lot of angry people.
Potentially, so.
And the golf course closed for another year.
And the golf course would have to stay closed for an additional year. And then I'll wrap up really soon here. I do want to talk about, the fiscal impact. Obviously, if we can find a way to move forward with the LORAC project, I do need to publicly make council and everybody aware that our bond program, our May 2019 Parks Bond program will be closed, will be done with that. And obviously there are projects that we were hoping to accomplish and thought that we could accomplish, i.e. the Receipt Park project and the skate park, that we will not have the funds and we'll have to come up with a funding strategy in order to accomplish those in the future. With going and saying that we're going to cancel and redo the LORAC or rebid it at a later date, there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of risk associated with that, and we don't know what the fiscal impact would be on that, if it would be good or bad. Right. With that being said, I can answer any questions about the staff report or the process. And then I do want to say that from the standpoint of staff, we do recommend that we would look for direction to continue value engineering, finding out what help the school district can concretely support, and then work internally with the city manager's office and our finance department to see a potential funding source outside of parks to help fund the gap. And then second would be for council to recognize that we need to postpone the Receipt Park project until we as staff can come back with a funding strategy to accomplish that.
Okay.
So with that,
thank you for the
I
resolution.
also
ready to have questions.
asked Director Cross to stay here, so if you have any questions that Ivan can't answer, Sean, I'm sure, is dying to give you a really long-winded answer.
He really wanted to be here all night, right?
I owe him.
I mean, I want to let you know, Director Anderholm, you all in the department have done a great job getting a lot of projects done amidst the pandemic through this bond program and a lot of community engagement. And it's easy, I think, to forget how many projects we have accomplished to date with the Parks Bond that have gone really well, and all of the years of engagement that have gone into these other projects. I mean, we all know there's a lot that goes in. If it was just a few of us planning it, well, I mean, it would go faster, but people wouldn't be happy, right? So, so for those who wonder, gosh, is this, I think in 2019, here we are almost to 2023, why is it just a pool? Well, we've been talking about it for a long time, and even for years before we even had the Parks Bond, deciding, how we're going to program, and of course, working in great partnership with the school district, who we would not be able to do this project without. And of course, it's just a good working partnership between the two of us. I am definitely in favor of continuing to move forward on the pool. I mean, I think to meet these we have been committing to the community, the swimming pool. The school district has committed to the community. I mean, I don't even think it's an option to not, move forward with the swimming pool, despite the situation we find ourselves in here, which we couldn't have anticipated with these increased costs and whatnot coming here on the tail end of the pandemic, timing, of course. And here we are at the tail end of the bond. I know there's so many of us on the council who are really dedicated to Receipt, especially to the skate park, and since that is a promise, that was made to the community back when we removed the skate park at the maintenance center, and we want folks to understand that putting Receipt to the side for now is temporary. Not we're not ever doing Receipt, but obviously just not as soon as we thought we'd be able. And it would be great too, as we pursue, funding options, if there's support to, look at even phasing that project to be able to accomplish, say, the skate park in one phase, and the rest of the park or other components in other phases as funds become available. And of course, as a city, we are very good at saving up and doing these projects incrementally. It's unique that we have a big bond like this, where we have been doing back-to-back-to-back projects, where SEEK will probably end up being a project more than we typically do, where we, pinch our pennies and save and approach it that way. Okay. Well, those are my comments. Let's hear my colleagues feel. Councilor Nguyen, please. Okay. Do you want? Okay, Councilor Mantz, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. And then I'm gonna log off, guys.
Okay.
When we're done with this, and I'll give what I think my head nod should be on this. I understand we need to get the golf course done. We need to get LORAC done. The only alternative that I can really see after pouring through, numbers is to find funds in the general funds to make up some of that shortfall, but receipt is going to have to be put on hold. That said, I beg of the new council and all of you to please remember the skate park and our tweens and our teens, and keep that, as the mayor said, always first and foremost after these two projects are finished. But I don't see any way around it at this point in time. So that would be pretty much my head nod direction of what to do. And because I'm a senior, I was able to say that.
The senior counselor.
Yes.
and now the counselor who's going to go, well, I can still talk a little bit. Thank you all very much. And bon chance, and we'll see you soon.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Councilor Mantz.
Take care.
We
Bye-bye.
appreciate you. Well,
I appreciate it.
No, well, she's off. Thanks,
Boy,
Carrie.
cut off of service, 8 years, and she gets cut off.
We're all nice. Just kidding. Councilor Wade.
Well, before we cut off Councilor Mantz, I was going to propose not calling her senior, call her emeritus, maybe Councilor Emeritus.
Oh, that's very nice. Very classic.
Certainly, I want to be able to figure out how do we get a LORAC built, right? And so my question, a couple of questions I had was, so the bid that we got from the contractor at 37 million, right? Was that before? I mean, I'm just trying to think about if construction costs have come down with, would this have been before the interest rate hikes and the softening of the construction market yet? Or is there any way we can come back and say, look, we want to get this done, sharpen your pencil a bit more. How do we get this done for less than 37 million?
To answer your question, it was in November 17th is when the pricing proposal, we received it. So it was before the last interest rate hike, but yeah.
But what we're seeing is a softening in residential construction. These mid-size projects, the really big ones and the really small ones are softening, but the mid-size ones are going strong in the Portland region still. So I think that's what we're concerned about, is that actually if we took this project out to bid again, we wouldn't get better pricing. We might get worse pricing, and we're definitely going to get a 1-year delay.
Well, I guess by saying that, I think we're kind of setting ourselves up for any contractors listening, hey, the city's going to expect even more if we put it out to bid again. So I think we're self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd say just if we can.
Public works.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to keep going up no matter what. And so I just say if there's any way we can at least ask the question or go through the exercise. And the other thing was I was going to say, at our last meeting, we were talking about naming rights or something, if that's an opportunity for us to be able to maybe patch that shortfall without having to dip into a general fund, and maybe if they were able to you know, offer some sort of sponsorship or some naming rights to the LORAC or something to.
You can sell the naming rights at any time. So just like we did with the City Hall project, or sort of loaning money to the redevelopment agency, or the general fund loaning money to the redevelopment agency, if you got a sponsorship in the future, you could always refund the general fund.
So if there's any
Like the
shoe companies,
recreational or the man.
or any shoe companies, athletic wear companies that would like to put their name on the LORAC, you know, we're short about 3.7 million, so. Just.
It's good thinking.
It's less than a political contribution, right? But.
Councilor Burdick.
I just wanted to say, Director Anderholm, thank you for, I mean, you did a nice job bringing bad news. So that's hard to do. So just want to acknowledge that. I know that's never easy and you handled it with grace. I don't have much different to say. I just, again, want to reinforce the importance of that skate park. And I know Councilor Raff also wanted to make sure that, you know, he wasn't able to be here tonight, but that is extremely important to him as well. So I think you pretty much have a strong, I don't want to quite speak for some others, but potentially unanimous, just that skate park's so important. And it's just been so long. So just want to put that out there. But again, I think we need to move forward with LORAC and do our best to ensure that our programming isn't going to, you know, kind of suffer because of this. So I appreciate your priorities and I agree with them.
Andrew, well, when it comes to the value engineering, I mean, the programming or the, you know, integrity of the you know, the resiliency of the building either.
Those are areas that we wouldn't want to go in. And really, so when we had our discussion and we discussed this with our design team and then obviously with our internal team, which also is represented by the school district, we don't want to take away from the resiliency of the building. We don't want to take away from the program, the programmatic aspects of it. And then the third thing that we wanted to ensure is that the project meets the general expectation of the community that was expressed during our public engagement process. So we're not going to do anything that takes away the integrity of the building. We're not going to take away from the program. The other main thing there too that we don't want to do with value engineering is significantly change the footprint of the building that would require us to go back through land use approval.
Right.
So when we're talking about the form of the building, the massing of the building, we're not talking about doing that. If that was something that was desired, then the only option that we would really have would be to cancel, go into public engagement and really look at that, because that would be a significant enough change that, and again, to change that footprint or go back into land use, there's no way to hit the appropriate timing for getting competitive bids on a project like this. So we would miss that window.
And hopefully just not, you know, sometimes there's short-term cost savings that then lead to, you know, increased operating costs down the road, so that we just keep think holistically about.
Right, I think that's one of the things that we have to remember is that the capital costs are once and the operating goes on forever. And so I think we did analyze it from the standpoint of the architecture, building, layout, programming opportunities is going to enhance the best possible revenue stream to break as close to even as one can in the pool business. That's right. And that would be both from the district standpoint and from our standpoint. So I think it's somewhat like the water treatment plant. This is a complex sort of decision. It wasn't just a quick way to put things together. And I'm in full support, and I agree with my colleagues that we will find a way how to do both projects. It's just when, that's right. And that's just one of the things that maybe we all have to go out and solicit large companies with big checkbooks. Hey, it's not beneath or above us. I think it's prudent. But anyway, I do want to recognize the great partnership that Ivan and Tony have, who is their representative with the district, who have labored over this project. And I think it's good that, it's good that we can solve this problem. It's sad that we have to, but it's workable. And I think with the meeting that we had with Martha and the superintendent and their whole team, everybody wanted to move forward with as much gusto. And it was great news that their project came in about on bid or near enough that they may have some additional money in their bond, because that's the only place that they can get it for this project.
Yeah.
So maybe the stars are lining up a little bit for us. We don't know how big of a contribution they'll make, but it looks like they'll be making something, right, Liz, in your other role of school board member in the corner? So anyway, we just keep working together for the citizens of Lake Oswego, and it's going to be a great project.
Right. So thank you, Councilor Wendland. And, City Manager Bennett, do you want to talk to us a little bit about, the sources of operational funds?
And Sean's here, so you guys watch Sean while I talk, and like if he grimaces, I messed up. The only place you really have to go for this is your discretionary general fund dollars. You do direct some of your general fund to capital projects right now. Also, every city manager I know worth their salt will tell you you're going to want to use those one-time funds for one-time expenses like this. The most obvious place to look is you make a $3 million a year transfer to the street fund to do capital projects. So that's a place to look. And then if you have any unanticipated fund balance at the end, unbudgeted fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, when we come to the end of the year, I would also say to you that we will not have a cash flow problem. We have a dollar problem with this project, but we don't have a cash flow problem with this project. So if you make a decision to proceed, once we've calculated what the value engineering is, and once the school district has given us a concrete number, then I can give you a better understanding of what the impact it is. It's going to be less than 3.6 million, so you don't have to completely eliminate the transfer from the general fund into the street fund, but it's possible that we will just make that smaller in the upcoming biennium. Kind of a simultaneously good news, bad news is, I think you probably all know that we're having struggles hiring project managers who are engineers right now, and so you could probably reduce the transfer to the street fund for 1 year and have it not impact any particular capital project that's not already impacted by our staff shortfall.
That's good.
And there is no way we can go back, talk to the construction firm and...
No, we can talk to the construction firm, but you can't just say, hey, you submitted it. You can't violate it. Evan's sitting next to me squirming when you guys talk about that, because we can't violate state procurement and purchasing laws when we do it. So really our alternative is to cancel the procurement and go back out again. But what Ivan just said is that's at least a 6-week delay. And if we go into the market at the wrong time of year, it's more like a year delay. I'm very concerned about delaying this project for another year for quite a few reasons. I just don't think that's going to result in a better project at a lower cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have the direction.
So basically, when we come into budget cycle, you'll if we move forward with this, present us with a budget that incorporates
this, and we're going to proceed. I guess the other thing that Ivan didn't say is if you give us a head nod, we'll be back in 2 weeks to ask you to award the contract. So we'll be awarding the contract, knowing that we still have to make sure we come back to you with the remaining funding strategy.
That's right.
Wow. And
so you're committing to helping us find that $3.6 million
yes.
right now?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. And there is the outside chance that we won't use all of contingency, which is 10%, which is 3.7.
In which case you could decide what to do with any remainder, whether you return that to the general fund, or whether you let Parks keep it, or use it for seed money for another project. There's a number of strategies you could deploy.
And what are we going to do with Razik?
You're going to put that on your 2023 goals list, and we're going to develop a funding strategy, because there's different ways we could go about tackling that problem. But I don't think we're going to solve that policy problem this evening.
Right. When it was on the consent agenda, and a small thing, but just to let the Director Harmon know that we legalized all of your athletic field signs tonight. So just take that back. Free of charge, too.
Yeah, that's our down payment.
Okay. So do you have we have lots of head nods for this.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks to award a contract.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Director Anderholm. Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Ross. Okay. Good work.
There's no motion.
Okay.
Well, there was a motion to suspend RESIC and to continue value engineering. Do you want?
Who wants to make this motion?
It was on.
Yes, here.
Shall I make a motion? I will move to direct staff to continue value engineering negotiations with the selected contractor before submitting a construction contract for award to the council, and move to postpone the RESIC project until a fundraising strategy is developed.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Councilwoman. Okay, is there any information from council? We don't have. Okay.
I just want to thank Councilor Nguyen. I'd thank Councilor Mans if she was still here. I have appreciated getting a chance to work for you and work with you. And then just a quick reminder, since the holidays, the 2 holidays fall on Sundays this year, the city offices and other operations would be closed on the Monday afterwards. So don't attempt to go to the library on the 26th.
Thank you. Farewell, Councilor Nguyen. Of course, you know, we would like to see in your office down there, some kind of a red phone on your desk that is just a direct line into Lake Oswego. And when it rings, you tell them to pick up.
Right.
Yeah. That's the least. And I want to also thank Councilor Windham for doing a great job serving as our council president this past year. Really appreciated you in this role. A big advocate for everything here in the community and representing us well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay.
So I don't have to come back in January? Oh, that's right.
We are now going to meet in executive session, and I'll ask Attorney Boone to please read the parameters for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor. The Lake Oswego City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, and I, to review and evaluate employment-related performance of the chief executive officer, the public officers or employees who have not requested an open hearing. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision will be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, you will return to open session or no? No. The council will be adjourning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. So yes, this will now conclude the broadcast portion of the meeting. We will adjourn and to go into executive session. Thank you and have a great, happy holidays.